Done. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Please, if possible, switch on your cameras. Let's make the session as interactive as possible. Please switch on the cameras if possible. Am I audible to you? Am I audible to you? Yes. Thank you. Well, welcome to the mains Parikshan discussion class. I'm assuming all of you have participated in the mains Parikshan and pre-Parikshan. Thanks for participating in the mains Parikshan and pre-Parikshan and making it a great successful event. For those of you who have been waiting for the results will be declared very soon. In the meanwhile, let's complete the discussion class. And the purpose of the discussion class is to make you understand how to attempt the mains questions. Okay. Okay. So I'm sure you have the question papers with you. So even if you don't have the question paper with you, we'll discuss each and every question. But it's just that the serial numbers are different. We are starting with the question number 7. It's a question from social justice. Do you think the existing policy of affirmative action is effective in achieving the goal of social justice? Give arguments to justify your opinion. See, the background of this question was recent constitutional upholding the constitutional validity of EWS reservation by the Supreme Court. Okay, so in that context, there was a debate on efficacy of affirmative action. Efficacy of affirmative action. Okay. This comes under the syllabus head of mechanisms, laws, institutions, and bodies constituted for the protection and betterment of vulnerable sections. Okay. From GS paper 2. Similar questions were asked by the UPSC. Okay. So first, let's understand how to answer this question. So how do we start this question, this answer? So the ideal way of answering this question, starting this answer, is by making the examiner understanding what affirmative action is all about. So you don't have to come up with classical definitions to explain affirmative action. Any layman definition is more than enough, but it's just that your definition should convey the purpose of affirmative action is. Okay. So affirmative action refers to those policies and initiatives of the government which promotes equal opportunities to marginal sections. Okay. All those sections which faced discrimination, deprivation, and historical injustice owing to their identity. That identity might be caste, gender, religion, race, or class. Okay. So the basic purpose of affirmative action is to create a level playing field for these marginal sections so that they can compete with other privileged sections of the society. Okay. So the basic idea is to increase the representation in those sectors where they were not adequately represented, be it in education, politics, public employment, private employment, or any other fields of the society. Okay. So now that you understand the basic meaning of affirmative action, you can start explaining the examples of affirmative action. Okay. See, being a welfare society, India has been taking a host of affirmative action policies since independence. Okay. Some examples. Reservations in politics, reservation in education, public employment. Okay. Education, political institutions like parliament, state legislative assemblies, and local bodies, and public employment. Other kinds of reservation, other kinds of affirmative action policies are giving preferential treatment to marginal sections in government's welfare policies. For example, take the case of NREGA. Preference should be given to workers from SC background, worker from SC category, and women employees, women workers. The same thing. Take the case of Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana or Ujjwala scheme. In all these welfare schemes, preference will be given to marginal sections. So preferential treatment in welfare programs. And preferential treatment when it comes to sharing of financial resources as well. One such example is priority sector lending. So priority sector lending norms mandate banks to give at least 12% of their ANBC to weaker sections. So it's a kind of preferential treatment to the marginal sections. Or else take the case of SC or ST subplan. Some state governments came up with SC, ST subplans, which mandates that certain percentage of their total public expenditure should be devoted to the developmental activities of SC and ST population. So here we are giving preferential treatment while sharing financial resources, PSL norms. So all these are examples of various affirmative action policies, isn't it? So the introduction of the answer should be the basic definition of affirmative action and some examples. Okay, that's it. So now let's get back to the question. See, do you think that existing policy of affirmative action is effective in achieving the goal of social justice? Here, you explained what is affirmative action with examples. So, since this question is opinionated question, he is asking your opinion whether it was effective or not in achieving the goal of social justice. So you cannot end up writing a single opinion and substantiating your arguments to support your opinion in only one dimension. So the ideal way of answering such questions is to give both the sides of the view. Okay. So first of all, of course, India has been pursuing different affirmative action policies since independence. So you cannot talk about only its negatives and limitations. So definitely these policies might have benefited the marginal section to some extent. So in the first part of the answer, we have to talk about how these affirmative action policies in fact benefited the marginal sections. Okay. So first benefit is increasing the representation of these marginal sections in political and public employment and educational institutions. For example, SC/ST population, SC/ST candidates are given, reservations are given to SC/ST population in parliament and state legislative assemblies and local bodies in proportion to their population. So this ensured adequate representation of these marginal sections in political institutions. It also economically empowered certain marginal sections by reserving some percentage of public employment opportunities to these marginal sections. And also it reduced inequalities to some extent. You cannot absolutely say that the affirmative action policies have abolished the inequalities, eradicated the inequalities, but yes, it reduced the inequalities to some extent. So the first part of the answer should talk about the benefits, how it adequately achieved the representation, adequate representation of these marginal sections, how it ended up economically empowering certain sections and reducing the inequalities, how it ensured diversity in all these institutions. Okay. So these arguments should be substantiated by a fact. Okay. You can come up with any fact. Let's say All India Survey of Higher Education, which clearly says that there has been significant improvement in the gross enrollment ratio of SC and ST population in higher education, thanks to reservations in the higher education for these sections and scholarships given to them by the government. So thanks to these affirmative action policies, we have seen increasing representation of SC and STs in the higher education. Or else you can come up with any other, stat from NSSO. You can come up with any NSSO data which shows that increasing house ownership or increasing access to clean energy, increasing access to institutional credit, all these facts can be used to substantiate the argument that affirmative action policies have benefited the marginal sections to some extent. Okay, so that is the first part of the body. Now, of course, the mere fact that India has been pursuing these affirmative action policies since 7 decades and their perpetual existence reflects some limitations with these mechanisms, isn't it? So let us discuss what are the issues with the existing affirmative action policies, which failed to achieve the goal of social justice. Okay, this is the major crux. This is the crux of the entire answer. Okay, so the examiner would wait for these points which sufficiently address this part, issues with the existing affirmative actions. Okay, first and foremost, they are limited to the state sector and its institutions. Of course, if you see the affirmative action policies, most of these opportunities are given to the beneficiaries by the state or state institutions. Reservations in the political institutions, or reservations in the public employment. You don't find reservations in the private employment. Okay, so one negative consequence of this is that post LPG, the state has reduced its social expenditure. Government is no more the principal employment generator rather than employment facilitator. Okay, the source of public employment has proportion of public employment has significantly come down when compared to the private employment. Okay, so when the government has reduced its role after LPG, the potential benefits given to these marginal sections have come down, isn't it? So this is the problem with limiting the affirmative actions to state and its institutions. Okay, the other issue is over reliance on the principle of proportional representation. See, our affirmative action policies are heavily obsessed with this principle of proportional representation. See, whenever they find that some section of the population are not being adequately represented in any of the sector, be it economic sector, political sector, or education sector, government have time and again tried to increase their representation. Okay, which is good, but this principle of proportional representation should be a tool to achieve economic empowerment and social empowerment of these marginal sections, but it has become an end in itself. It has a negative consequence. For example, if the government believes that Dalits are not properly represented in public education, in public employment or education, they extend reservation benefits to them. Or else, if government believes that women are not adequately represented in particular sector, they might extend reservations to them to increase their proportional representation. But is it leading to empowerment of all the beneficiaries, all the deserving sections on the ground? No. The reason is, when the government is very much obsessed with proportional representation, it leads to singularization of the categories. For example, and it ends up masking the internal differences between different subcaste groups within the SC category, broad SC category. For example, let's take the case of SC or ST. We have seen that there emerged an elite within these marginal sections who predominantly took the benefits of government, or affirmative action policies. So the discriminated sections within these scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, even till today, were not able to access the government benefits. So this has led to this over obsession with proportional representation and not taking care of the ground level empowerment, and at the ground level will have a negative consequence of singularization of the caste, and it disguises the internal differences within the subcastes, internal differences among the subcaste within the same caste category. So that is one of the issues with the existing framework of affirmative action. The other is over expansion of potential beneficiaries, perpetual expansion of potential beneficiaries. See, vote bank politics often compel the government to expand the potential beneficiaries. Okay, we have seen subsequent adding of castes to the SC and ST list and OBC list from time and again. Okay, see, often it ended up crossing the judicially mandated limit of 50%, and it works against the favor of social justice. So the more number of communities, the more number of sections of more number of population is being added to the potential beneficiaries, the deserving beneficiaries will have less chances to take the benefits of affirmative action policies. So the vote bank politics and subsequent expansion of potential beneficiaries is also one of the negative issues with respect to the existing affirmative action. And the other is, caste is often used as a sole criteria for identification of the potential beneficiaries. See, yes, we agree, caste is a proxy to the multidimensional deprivation in Indian society. There is no doubt about it. But often it reinforces an opinion in the policy circles that what is not being recorded by the caste, what is not being tracked by the caste, is not worth tracking, and it is not worth dealing with by the affirmative action policies. So there are multiple deprivations. Caste is one such deprivation. Caste is one such factor which determines which deprives an individual. But there are other issues like gender, rural, race, class, Supreme Court has time and again reminded the government to expand the criteria beyond the caste so that the benefits of affirmative action policies reaches to the beneficiaries, potential beneficiaries, deserving beneficiaries. Okay. And the other issue is, so we have seen till now that how government affirmative action policies are heavily lenient, tilted towards reservation. So whenever government feels that there is adequate representation and there are genuine demands from a section of the policies, reservations are seen as a quick fix solutions to those problems. There are other alternatives to the reservations, just like giving tax incentives. See, we have seen here that reservations or other affirmative actions are, especially reservations, they are confined to only the state sector, so they cannot be extended to private sector. But if we see reservation as the sole mechanism of affirmative action, we tend to extend this in the private sector. For example, we have seen this in recently when Haryana state government has came up with a law asking the private employers to give reservations to the locals at a time when there is seamless flow of labor is going on, and at a time when central government is actually unifying the market through policies like GST. Giving reservations to them in the private sector is not going to, giving reservations in the private employment, giving reservation to the locals is not going to integrate the markets. Okay, so now it is high time that we think beyond reservations to expand the mechanism of affirmative actions, just like giving tax incentives. You can give tax incentives to the private institutions if they hire certain amount of female labor, instead of giving reservations in the reservation for female labor in the private sector. Okay, the other issue is resentment among non-beneficiaries. See, often reservations or any affirmative action policies in that matter, any affirmative action policy would end up creating a negative bias and reinforces the stereotypes existing in the society. For example, often women reservations is looked down upon. It leads to passive discrimination. One example of passive discrimination is that the candidates who reaches higher levels by using government's affirmative actions, just like reservations in education, higher education and public employment, they're often questioned about their abilities in their work. So this is one classical example of passive discrimination. So this is because it has created, these affirmative action policies created resentment among non-beneficiaries, and that is manifested in reinforcing of stereotypes and instances of passive discrimination at workplace. Okay, so these are the issues with the existing affirmative actions. Okay, so now that we addressed both the sides of the argument, that if the existing policy of affirmative action is, whether it is effective in dealing with in achieving the goal of social justice or not. Okay, now you have a scope to give some suggestions. Okay, see, these are the suggestions. First suggestion is refining the target groups. How do you refine the target groups, rationalize the target groups, so that the benefits reaches the deserving beneficiaries? Okay, so how do you refine the target groups? Subcategorization. Subcategorizing all the beneficiaries so that the most deprived section within the beneficiaries would be given higher priority. Okay, just like subcategorizing OBC, SC and ST, so that the benefits of affirmative action policies would reach the deserving beneficiaries. Okay, and reducing the multi-generational advantage. How do you reduce the multi-generational advantage? For example, if a candidate, if a person entails the benefits, takes the benefit of reservation, his next generation can avail of the benefits of reservation only. For example, if a person uses the reservation to get a class 2 job, his sons and daughters should get reservation benefits only for those jobs which are above class 2, not below. So this would reduce the multi-generational advantage. Okay. So these are the ways we can refine the target groups. Okay. Again, as we have seen, the one of the issues with existing affirmative action policies is that the narrow criteria in determining the potential beneficiaries. We have often given too much of emphasis on caste, and caste has become the sole criteria for identification of the potential beneficiaries. In that context, multi-dimensional deprivation index might help. Okay. So, for example, recently Niti Aayog has come up with multi-dimensional poverty index, which took into account of multiple deprivations. Okay. So socioeconomic caste census can also be used to determine a multidimensional poverty deprivation index. Okay. The other suggestion is redesigning the mechanism of affirmative action. As we seen earlier, reservation has become the only policy of government, affirmative actions, predominantly, that has been the major policy of affirmative action. Now it is time to look for other affirmative action policies, other types of policies. For example, giving tax benefits, giving preferential treatment to while giving credit. One good example is stand-up scheme. It gives preferential treatment to SC, ST, and women entrepreneurs. Okay, so they will be given incentives to increase these marginal sections in the private sector as well. Okay, and robust data collection. How do you assess if the affirmative action policies are really, reflecting, really materializing, if the benefits are being really materialized or not? Only through proper data collection. Okay, so regular periodical data collection about the socio-economic status of these vulnerable sections will give a clear idea. It will help in targeting the, in identifying the target groups, and also it will help you to understand whether a scheme is being really helpful in achieving the desired objectives or not. Okay, so these are the major suggestions. You can give these suggestions. See, since this is a 15-marker question and the body already has 2 parts, either you can give the suggestions in a diagram format, or you can you can mention these suggestions in the conclusion as well. Okay, in the conclusion. See, this is the answer. In the introduction, we have talked about briefly affirmative action and substantiated by an example how affirmative action impacted marginal sections to some extent, and limitations. All those limitations we have discussed till now. And some suggestions. Okay. So how do you conclude the answer? If you're giving suggestions in the answer, that's fine. If you're giving suggestions in the body, try to conclude it by summarizing the arguments. Okay. This is one way of concluding the answer. So although affirmative actions are needed to outweigh the imbalances of the past, however, there must be balanced approach and new innovations in the policy approach for inclusive development. we need new innovations in the policy approach. So that is the basic summary of the answer. So we can conclude the answer by summarizing all the arguments that we have given in the answer. Okay. So that's about the 7th question. So let us go to the 8th question. Look at the question. Increasing the farmers' income is the key to sustainable agriculture in India. In this regard, discuss the challenges in achieving the goal of doubling the farmers' income. There was a reason why this question was asked. So the goal of the government was to double the farmers' income by 2022. And till now, there has been no material evidence to show that this goal has been achieved. Okay. So this is the context behind the question. So we have reached 2023. Still, we haven't achieved this goal. So what are the challenges? What are the challenges? So that is the crux of the question. But before that, let us address this statement. Increasing the farmers' income is the key to sustainable agriculture in India. So the question is not only demanding the challenges in achieving the achieving the goal of doubling farmers' income, but also in the first part, why farmers' income is important. Why increasing the farmers' income is important. That should be addressed in the first part. Okay, let's see. Increasing the farmers' income is key to sustainable agriculture in India. See, according to Reserve Bank of India's study, the annual average income of a agricultural household is around average monthly income of an agricultural household is around 10,000. So of course, which is way below. So this low income of these farmers will motivate them to adopt unsustainable agricultural practices. What are they? For example, overexploitation of groundwater, or over-tilling, excessive use of fertilizers and pesticides, and also sowing those crops which are not suitable for the agroclimatic conditions of the region. So most of the times farmers resort to sowing those crops which are not suitable for the agroclimatic conditions, but they were income starved. So they are not assured of a market price, in a decent market price. They are not assured of procurement by the government. So they end up sowing those crops which are not suitable for the particular region. So all these are unsustainable practices because of low income of the farmer. So low income, it leads to unsustainable agriculture practices. Monocropping is also one of the reasons. One unsustainable agriculture practice. So these unsustainable agricultural practice will reduce the agricultural productivity in the longer run. Okay. It will reduce agricultural productivity. Obviously, reducing agricultural productivity will result in fall in the income of the farmers, and it creates a vicious cycle. So that is why increasing the farmers' income is necessary to break this vicious cycle. And that is very much crucial for sustainable agriculture in India. Okay, both environmentally sustainable, economically viable, and socially responsible. Okay. So this is the first sentence. This is the first statement. Okay. Now let's get to the question. Let's get to the major part of the question, that is discuss the challenges in achieving the goal of doubling the farmer's income. So in the introduction, in the first part of the answer, you have to talk about how increasing income of farmer is important for sustainability of the agriculture. Okay. And in the second part, we have to talk about challenges to doubling farmers' income. Okay. Of course, there are multiple challenges. So it is better to categorize them under different heads so that we don't miss out on any important point. Okay. So we are going to discuss the challenges of doubling farmers' income at 3 different levels. First, at the input level. Let's take few challenges at the input level. Seeds. In India, seed replacement ratio is very less. So what is seed replacement ratio? The amount of total cropped area in which fresh certified seeds are sown when compared to the farm saved seeds. In India, this ratio is actually, seed replacement ratio is 15%. That means only 15% of the total cropped area is being sown with fresh certified seeds, and the rest of the 85% cropped area is being sown with farm saved seeds. These farm saved seeds will have less productivity when compared to the fresh seeds. So, but why is this? The reason is lack of quality seeds in the market. And why is that? Because of loose IPR regime in India and strict price controls. These two reasons disincentivized private investment in the seed research and seed manufacturing, which created dearth of quality seeds in the market. So it increased the price of seeds in the market. So farmers, either due to the lack of seeds in the market or due to unaffordability of these quality seeds, they end up sowing the farm saved seeds, which ultimately impacted the crop productivity, and that reduced the income of the farmer. So this is one reason, one challenge. Increasing seed replacement ratio is a challenge. Second, take the case of land. One challenge with the land is that land fragmentation. According to agricultural census, the average operational landholding size is less than 2 hectares. So these small and marginal landholdings are not conducive to the mechanization of agriculture, and they are economically unviable. Okay, so land fragmentation is a challenge. The other is restrictive land leasing policies. See, in India, when India attained independence, it had undertaken multiple land reforms. One important land reform is to abolish jamindars and abolish intermediaries. Okay. Most of the state governments actually completely abolished land leasing. Some states did not abolish the land leasing, but they have given strict conditions like high rental assurance to the tenants, or giving ownership rights to the tenants beyond a limit. So these restrictive land leasing policies have in fact resulted in oral tenancy. What is oral tenancy? So though tenancy is being practiced even now, that is not clearly legally recognized in the eyes of the government. So they're concealed. So there is no contractual obligation here. So there is no security of tenure to the tenant. So when there is no security of tenure to the tenant due to oral tenancy, he has less incentive to invest in the field to increase its productivity. So there will be no capital investment to increase the productivity of the farm. That is one challenge. And the other is, when there is oral tenancy, the tenant is not at all recognized. So there is no rent protection. He cannot take he cannot take advantage of rent regulation acts if it is not officially, if he is not officially recognized as a tenant, and he is not going to get institutional credit. Okay, so this impacts the income of farmer at the end. Okay, these restrictive land leasing policies also prevented contract farming. Contract farming, which contract farming would have, has the potential to increase the farmer's income, because they have an issued buyer for an issued price. So they don't have to be vulnerable to the market volatility. But thanks to the restrictive land leasing policies, even contracting farming also could not be successful in India. So all these are actually issues with land aspect. The other is finance or credit. Due to these reasons, most of the small and marginal farmers are actually resorting to non-institutional credit. According to RBI's Financial Inclusion Survey, more than 60% of small and marginal farmers depend on non-agricultural credit for their agricultural operations. So non-institutional lending is one challenge. Non-institutional lending is given at a higher interest rate, which increases the input cost for the farmer and reduces the profit of the farmer. So these are the issues at the input level which impacted the income of the farmer. Next is infrastructure. Of course, infrastructure level issues. Lack of adequate storage facilities resulted in loss of post-harvest losses up to 30%. 10% for grains, but 30% for perishable goods like vegetables and fruits. So lack of storage facilities and lack of grading, sorting, cleaning, packaging, and food processing facilities, which otherwise would have increased the income to the farmer. So rather than selling the raw material, a processed agricultural good would attract better value in the market. But lack of these facilities, grading facilities and food processing facilities, packaging facilities, reduce the potential income earned by the farmer. Okay, and come to the marketing issues. First and foremost is APMCs, Agricultural Produce Marketing Committee Acts. In India, agriculture marketing is regulated by APMC, state level APMC acts. These APMC acts monopolized agriculture markets in India and prevented the realization of value or realization of natural price for their commodities. See, APMCs have actually fragmented the agriculture markets. So this prevented seamless flow of agricultural goods across the markets. First thing is, it is not beneficial to the farmer because the farmers, the traders collude to artificially lower the price. So there is no natural price realization in the market. So that is not beneficial to the farmer. So he has to sell at a less price. Okay, so that impacted the income of the farmer. And second thing, this fragmentation of the markets prevented the private investment in food processing industries. Okay, so that also impacted the income of the farmer. So APMCs, issues with APMCs is one thing. And second, Essential Commodities Act. Essential Commodities Act prevent any stockholder to maintain a stock beyond a limit so that it would not hurt the price in the domestic market. Okay, but this Essential Commodities Act had negative consequences. So this prevented again investment of large foreign investment in food processing industries, because food processing industries need to stock beyond the limits prescribed by Essential Commodities Act. Okay, and other marketing issue is MSP. minimum supporting price is an issued price given by the government, so that if the market price falls, the farmer would have an option to sell it to the government at an issued price. So this is to reduce the distress sale by the farmer. So though the intentions were actually good, see, though MSP policies are actually MSP rate is declared for more than 23 crops, the procurement is hardly done for 2 or 3 crops, mostly the cereal crops. So it incentivizes the farmer to grow crops which are cereal centric, to those crops which are issued, which are procured by the government. So this had impacted the crop diversification. It has impacted the crop diversification. And as I said, not all the crops are suitable for all the agroclimatic conditions. So this led to monocropping and reduced crop productivity, and in turn affected the income of the farmer. So MSP policies impacted the income of the farmer instead of helping them. And the other is export policies. Most of the times, agriculture export policies of government tend to be knee-jerk. So recently, a few months back, government imposed a ban of wheat to the ban on exports, ban on wheat exports. Okay. So that's what this was done with an intention of creating, reducing the price volatility. Okay. But when there is a global demand for the wheat, the farmer is not able to reap the benefits of wheat exports. So these knee-jerk wheat export policies also reduce the farmer's income. So these are the challenges of doubling the farmer's income. In the first part of the question, we have discussed why farmer's income is important. Increasing the farmer's income is important for sustainable agriculture in India. In the second part, we discussed the goals, challenges in achieving the goal of doubling the farmer's income. So in the solution, you can suggest some suggestions. In the conclusion, you can suggest some solutions. Okay. And summarize by saying that increasing the farmer's income will end up making the agriculture sustainable in India, which will ensure nutrition security and reduce rural distress in the economy. So that's about these two questions. And the discussion is going to be carried forward by Gaurav sir. He is going to discuss geography and environment questions. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, hi everyone. Is my voice audible to all of you? Please confirm if I'm audible. Okay, thank you, Abhishek. Yeah. So the scheme is that every subject expert will take the question answer discussions for his or her own subject. Okay, like Raja sir has taken a discussion for the society and economy. I will be taking a discussion for geography and environment, and so on. This process will go on. Okay. So without wasting any time, let us discuss this question. This question is from the geography section, and the subject mentions locational factors for industrial distribution. So read the question and try to brainstorm few points. Okay. So the question says, illustrate the significance of the transportation network in determining the locations of the industries across India. So as we all know that there are several factors which determine the industrial location in India as well as across the world. Okay. But this question is not general in sense. This question has narrowed itself. It is not asking about all the locational factors, but it is asking about the role of just one locational factor, which is the transportation network. So the first thing is that how you have to approach this particular question, that what is the line of direction in which you have to think about it. Okay. First, let us see that what are the various locational factors. One is the raw materials. Just going with the very basic information, we'll see that how a beautiful answer can be framed out of the basic information, which we all know. Okay. One is the raw material. Second is obviously the transportation. Correct? Then we also have labor. Correct? Labor also determines the industrial location. What are the other factors like capital or entrepreneurship, market? These are certain factors. Now, yeah, right, land, exactly. So there are several locational factors. But now this question, because it's asking only about the transportation factor. So how to think that how can we make an answer out of all these factors? Just focus on this particular aspect and see that how this transportation is going to impact all the other locational factors. For example, there is one more factor like agglomerations. Okay. So you just have to see that how transportation is going to impact raw materials, that what is the relation between transportation and raw material, how transportation will impact labor, how it will impact capital or entrepreneurship, how it is going to impact market, as well as agglomeration. If you are able to establish the link between these transportation networks and all the other locational factors, you will be having the answers in your head. For example, let us see. This is the rough India's map. Okay. Here we have one city, Visakhapatnam. And in this Visakhapatnam, we have one industry, iron and steel industry. But you tell me, does this region geologically has iron ores or iron mines here? No. Does this region geologically have coal here? No. Then how come iron and steel industry has been established over here? The reason is that because this particular location gets iron from Chhattisgarh in the form of, in liquid form, which is this slurry. You must have heard in your current affairs about the Bailadila mines. Okay. So Visakhapatnam is getting the iron in the slurry form, from Chhattisgarh. It is getting coal from Damodar region with the help of railways. Correct? So if you see, slurry is coming here with the help of pipeline, coal is coming here with the help of railway. So can I say that transportation network has helped iron and steel industry to get established in Visakhapatnam, which is not in proximity to that region which was rich in iron ore mines naturally. So the point becomes important that because the question is asking the role of transportation in determining the industrial location. So transportation first, it breaks the dominance of the raw material, right? Because earlier the industries were being established in the proximity to the raw material region, but now because of the efficient transportation, the industries can be set up at far-flung areas also. Correct? Let us analyze the impact of transportation network on labor. Now we shall take the example of Delhi. Okay, suppose this is Delhi. And this is true for almost any metropolitan region. Okay. In Delhi, we have several small cities around Delhi. For example, Gurgaon, Noida, Ghaziabad, Ballabgarh, etc. which are spread across different states like UP, Haryana, Rajasthan, then we can move farther beyond these adjacent areas. We can go towards Chandigarh, Jaipur, Meerut, etc. But we all know that Delhi NCR experiences commutation of lakhs of passengers every day from far-flung areas to the central Delhi. How is this possible? Because this region has well-established road networks as well as metro services. Now, earlier, the industries were being established at a region which had cheaper availability of labor. For example, let's say there are 2 points, A and B, correct? And this particular region has cheap labor. So it would be advisable for me, if I have to establish my industry, that I'll go and establish the industry at point A, assuming all other factors to be relevant. Okay, this is my assumption, because here we are talking only about labor. But then it might happen that at point B, I am getting other favorable factors also. Any factor from this. And because now I have transportation network lines, so that my dependence over point A will relatively reduce, because I was getting other factors at point B. A was having only the advantage of cheap labor, but because now I have established a transportation and communication lines, I can allow these labors to commute from A to B and then come back to A. So again, my dependence on those regions again has reduced, which were having the cheaper labor availability. Is it okay? Correct? Let us see about this point, market. How transportation impacts the locational factor market. Transportation, the better transportation increases the accessibility of the market. This is true for domestic markets. This is true for foreign markets as well. And this point is very obvious. Let us take another example. Here, we are having Kolkata port, correct? And in the proximity of this Kolkata port, we have an important industrial region, which is famous for its textiles. Which is that region? Hooghly textile region. Now, because we have the port facility, and ports again is one of the component of the transportation network, because we are having the port facilities over here, so it will allow the industrialists who are there in the West Bengal region, who have gained specialty in the textile sector, that they can export their textile products to, let's say, Southeast Asian countries. If there would not have been any port, then that market potential would not have been tapped. Okay, so we can tap the potential. That is why the transportation network increases the accessibility of the market. Some example can be quoted within the domestic boundaries of India as well. Here I have taken just the foreign example. Are you getting it? You just have to think about all the locational factors, and then you have to narrow down on this particular aspect, transportation, and just have to relate that how transportation is going to impact all the other locational factors, and you will be having the answers. Similarly, let's say capital or entrepreneurship. I ask you that if you are an industrialist and you have to, let's say, establish an industry over a particular region, don't you think that obviously you will be required roads, rail connectivity, waterways, airway, or some sort of communication network? Only then you will establish your industries, correct? So in a region, you might have also witnessed in your villages also, if you compare it with the 15 years time behind, that as the transportation or communication lines develop, that region prospers. It attracts the capital, it attracts the entrepreneurship. And obviously, if the region is attracting capital, if the region is attracting innovation, obviously it will also eventually attract industries, correct? If any particular region, because of several locational factors in which we have discussed that how transportation plays its role, is attracting a lot of industries, then obviously it will develop eventually an agglomeration effect. What is agglomeration? Agglomeration is basically a region whereby a lot of industries get developed and strong inter-industrial linkages get developed. inter-industrial linkages. If there are two industries, A and B, so the final product of A can become the raw material or the input for B. Okay, this is the inter-industrial linkages. And we know that transportation networks can build these inter-industrial linkages, forward and backward linkages. So again, if the transportation is developing the agglomeration effect in a particular region, so it will develop a positive feedback system that it will further attract more and more industries in this particular location, and hence these whole factors will determine the industrial location. Okay, along with all these factors, there is one more factor, which is nature of industries. So whenever we talk about the necessity of the proximity of the raw material region, we generally talk about the industries that are weight losing or the heavy industries. But then there are other types of industries also. For example, footloose industries. Let us take some example, diamond cutting. Now, diamond cutting industry, by the nature of this very industry, this is low volume and high value industry. Let us assume that you have your own vehicle, and in your, let's say, truck, you have 1 kg of wheat, 1 kg of rice, and 1 kg of diamonds. So can you see the difference between these things? Because diamond cutting industry is low volume. In just 1 kg, you have a very high value. And that is why the relative cost of transportation will reduce. And hence, if we have effective and efficient means of transportation, then we can transport this low volume and high value products to farther regions and again tap the market potential. Okay, so for the footloose industries, transportation networks have their own significance. Got it? Just think about transportation and just think that how this single factor is going to impact other factors, and you will get the answer. Correct? So this is the model sample answer for this question. The points which we have discussed are written here. Okay. Now, because this is a 10-marker question, so in generally in 10-marker questions, you do not have a lot of choice where you can experiment with introduction and conclusion. So in 10-marker, introduction and conclusion should be relatively shorter. The more the marks will be there when you will be writing the more number of dimensions. Okay. Conclusion can obviously, we all know that it can be on the it can reflect certain current affairs or the government steps which are being taken in order to increase the transport efficiency, in order to develop India as a manufacturing hub. Is it okay? This question is okay? Okay. Now we will be moving towards the next question. After geography, we'll come to the environment, and one of the most pressing concerns and important topic as far as the UPSC examination is concerned is the climate finance. By the virtue of this topic is important, and this topic has gained more significance in the recent times because most of you people have read about the COP27, whereby you must have seen the loss and damage funds. Okay, so let us see. Question asks you, what do you understand by the term climate finance? Why is it important? And discuss the challenges. So there are 3 parts. Again, a 10-marker questions. Again, no scope for a lot of experiments, introduction, and conclusion. Straight away coming to the answer. First, what do you understand by climate finance? So while defining the climate finance, there are certain key terms. Obviously, by very simple definition, the climate finance is the availability of the funds which can help to tackle the challenges which are posed because of the climate change. Correct? So this will be the very general definition. But UNFCCC, when it defines the climate finance, there are certain key words that the climate finance, there are 3 levels of the climate finance: local, national, as well as international. So that funding can be at the local level, at the national level, as well as at the international level, right? Who can provide these funds? It can be government, it can be private players, as well as alternative, for example, civil society organizations. Okay, so this fund can be at local, national, international level. Who can provide these funds? These are the important stakeholders. Okay, so the funds, the finance which is required to build the resilience against the climate change at these levels by these stakeholders is known as climate finance. Correct? Start with the very basic definition because a short question. Okay, now why is it important? What is the importance of climate finance? First, obviously, mitigation and adaptation. Correct? It is there in the definition itself. Second, support to the developing countries. This is the major issue. Developing countries and small island nations keeps on asking for the funds from the developed countries, and they are very much reluctant to provide that fund. Correct? And third is to hold the accountability of the developed world. Because if we have a mechanism of climate finance, only then we can ask developed countries that, see, we established this mechanism, but you have not provided the funds till now. Okay, this is what been this was a debate in COP 27 this year also, and this is a continuous debate. So the importance of the climate finance is this. Okay, now comes the major part, that what are the challenges when it comes to the climate finance. So what are the various challenges? The first challenge is the definition of the climate finance itself. Okay, yes, we have defined the climate finance, but in that definition, not only us, even the United Nations has not come up that what will be the exact mechanism of this financing. This financing will be in the form of loans, or this financing will be in the form of grants. How this financing has to be done? Data and studies suggest that most of the funds which are being provided by the developed countries to the developing countries are in the form of loans, that is non-concessional finance. And that is why we say that if the developed country want to help us and you are providing us the finance in the form of loans, then obviously eventually at some point of time, we have to repay that loan. No? If we have to repay that loan, that what kind of help is this? So that is why developing countries want that the funds should be given in the concessional financial mechanism, through the concessional financial mechanism, for example, grants, or at very low rate of interests. Okay, so because the definition has not mentioned the mechanism through which these funds has to be transferred, this becomes the critical issue, right? Second is the amount. Which is insufficient. So we all know that $100 billion per year were pledged by the developed countries, which is to be provided to the developing countries, correct? But it is, the commitment has not been fulfilled yet. And moreover, there are several studies. For example, let's say there is one study which says that just the financial cost of the fuel subsidy, which is provided by different countries, just this financial cost of fuel subsidy amounts to around $3.3 trillion. So the commitments are not sufficient. Leave aside that whether those commitments are fulfilled or not. Correct? So insufficient amount. Third is accountability. There is no mechanism to ensure the accountability. Just there can be some mechanisms of or the moral accountability, but however, the UNFCCC has not mentioned any legal mechanism to ensure the accountability. And that is why clear data are not kept. Clear? and because of which there is a significant mismatch between different studies. For example, developed countries said that in 2020, they gave around $60 billion to the developing world. On the other hand, Oxfam report said that this data is false and just around 20 to 25 billion dollars was being given by the developed world. So you can see there is a clear mismatch between this because there is no reporting mechanism, there is no legal mechanism to ensure the accountability. Clear? So these are certain challenges with respect to the climate finance, and that is why we need to come up with certain measures which can deal with this issue and can move towards a better world. Okay. So this will be the sample answer, correct? Yes, there was one more factor, low private participation. Okay, because why we are restricting towards the government finances only, the private players must also come forward. But again, we know that the private class or the capitalist class works on the principle of profit making, and hence till now they are not fully aware about the cost which the climate is going to make or is going to take a toll or over them also. So that is why it's written that they lack quantifiable incentives and are unwilling to internalize the environmental externalities. Okay. Are these challenges clear to all of you? Right? Okay. So now I'll be leaving and the next teacher will be taking the next few questions. Correct? Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. Please confirm to me that you can see the PPT. You can see question number 9 regarding artificial intelligence. Okay, great then. I hope you had a very good session, very productive, fruitful session so far. And I'll try my level best to match up to the standard of discussion that was happening so far. I'll discuss 3 questions with you, 1 of science and tech and 2 of ethics. I will discuss rather the essence of answer writing of those subjects and not just specific to those questions, so that after the discussion, you are left with something that will help you, aid you in writing the answer. It will guide you in writing answer to other questions as well. I'll read out the question and then we will slowly and gradually take forward. The recent advancement in artificial intelligence raised various concerns owing to a regulatory vacuum. In this context, discuss the need for the regulation of AI and suggest a way forward. It's a 15-marker, 250 words question. So there are 2 parts. Discuss the need for regulation of AI and suggest a way forward. The question is pretty straightforward, but I'll tell you one thing, and that will be a wise piece of advice for you. No matter how simple the question may look, your answer has to be very mature and as per the demand of the exam. Exam has 2 specific demands. One of the demand of your exam is to write as per the question. It's written in the notification that candidates are expected to be closely with the question. That's one of the demand. And the second demand is to write according to the syllabus. You may be reading newspaper articles. You may be finding some notes. If you Google, you'll find many reasons as to why artificial intelligence must be regulated. But the manner and the way that you will write answer to this question will be different from what you will be reading in general on Google, over internet, or in any notes that you may find, or any newspaper article. The reason is those things are not written specifically for the mains exam, but you have to write specifically for the mains exam. So I'll just share a simple piece of advice with you so that it will be quite helpful even in other questions that you attempt. Science and technology lies in GS paper 3, right? GS paper 3, and GS paper 3 has other subjects like economic development, environment and biodiversity, security, disaster management. So whenever you're writing any question on science and tech, on any topic of science and tech, you have to touch this area of science and tech first. For example, if I ask you what are the uses of advantages, applications of AI, so you will give me technological application first, and then you will venture out to write applications from other areas. AI will have application in various fields. It will have applications in choosing the beneficiaries. It will have applications in border management. It will have applications in diagnostics. So it will have application in various fields, but you will begin step by step in a simplistic manner as it is in your syllabus. So you will begin from science and technology, whether you're discussing problems or you're discussing advantages or significance or solutions, whatever. If you are answering a question of science and tech, you will begin that particular section, whatever has been asked, significance or advantages or limitations or need for regulations, you will give science and technology related reasons first. Then you may write about economic reasons, you may write about environmental reasons, you may write about security related reasons, you may write about disaster management. It is not necessary that you touch on all the 5 aspects of GS paper 3. Writing on 3 will be enough, or maybe 4. Then you go to other GS paper. You have GS2, where you have governance and constitution, polity, social justice, international relation. You can find application of technology in other areas as well. For example, space-based technology. It leads to strengthening of our relation with other countries. Space-based collaboration has strengthened our relation with countries like South Korea, Japan, Australia, European Union. So it has also application in history, studying the history, preservation of our monuments, preserving art and culture. For example, space-based technology or robotics. You must have heard about string puppetry. Robotics is finding application in Kerala in promoting string puppetry. So technology will have wider application. You have to write an answer like this. Only then it's going to be impressive and anyone is going to be impressed by your answer. You want to get good marks. This is the core of the demand of civil service mains exam. Whenever you write answer, present it in a form that it is quite evident that you know your syllabus very, very well. That's how you have to write. Now let's come back to this question of ours. The recent advancement in artificial intelligence raises various concerns owing to regulatory vacuum. It's a contextual statement. Whenever there is a contextual statement in a question, you must also write something about it in order to increase the value of that statement. And when you increase the value of that statement, that generally becomes the introduction to your answer. For example, you may write that the rapid growth and integration of artificial intelligence into various industries have raised concerns about its impact on society and economy, about ethics and law. However, many countries currently lack specific laws and regulations to address these issues, leading to regulatory vacuum. Right? So you have written something general that extends, adds meaning, adds more value to the contextual statement. You don't have to write anything from your own mind or your own understanding or on your own wisdom. As the question progresses, so must your answer. The question has given a contextual statement, write something about it, but increasing the value of that statement. That becomes the introduction. Now, the question, first part of the question is discuss the need for the regulation of AI. As such, if you sit down, you can think of hundreds of reasons. So there are many, many needs for regulating AI. But I have to write according to the syllabus of mains exam. And it's a simple thing, but simplicity may fetch us laurels, and it does often. If you do simple thing in a compounded manner, the power of that is huge. It's huge. To get good marks, you do not have to do all, as they say, rocket science. It's not rocket science. It's a simple thing, but you have to do it over and over again in all the answers. You will get very good marks. The point I'm trying to bring home here is when you have to write the need for regulation of AI, you have to write it according to the syllabus. I have told you that you have to begin from GS3. So there could be technological need. There could be economic need. There could be environmental need. There could be need related to security. Then you go to GS paper 2. There could be need related to governance, related to social justice, related to society. Go to GS paper 1. That's how. If you can cover 6 to 7 dimensions like this, your answer would be superb, superb. So I have written technological development. Regulation of AI is important because development of other technology is dependent on development of AI. So if AI is not regulated properly, then development of other technology will take a beating. For example, you know that machine learning is very, very closely related with AI. You know that Web 3.0 has one of the crucial elements as AI. Without AI, Web 3.0 cannot work. So if AI is not used in a right manner, because it is not regulated, then development of other technology will also take a beating because trust on those technology will be depleted. So for technological development, for development of technological ecosystem, for competition and innovation, it's important that AI is regulated properly. So these two are points from science and technology. You can have one, maybe if you wish, you can have two. Then you quickly go to other dimensions. Economic development. AI will find industrial application. It already has huge amount of industrial application along with robotics. AI along with robotics, they have huge application in automobile industry, in manufacturing industry. And when you have 3D printing and other technology getting ingrained in the industrial process, application of AI increases. So for economic development, it is estimated in the report of Niti Aayog in the National Strategy for Responsible AI, they have estimated that the potential that AI has to add in Indian economy is around 15% of GVA by 2035. Now, this is huge. Now, since AI is such a driver of economy, it is begged that it be regulated. Economic development. Then you move to other dimension, safety and security. That's the third dimension of your GS paper 3. It is hugely important that for safety and security, AI be regulated. There have been various cases, as you must have heard of autonomous vehicle. In one of the European countries, it has happened in France, it has happened in UK, Uber. Uber has launched autonomous driverless cars. Although sometimes there is a driver in the back seat for emergency control, but mostly, many a times, they leave the car to be operational on its own. And there has been cases of accidents when there was no traffic on the road and there was proper lighting as well. But still those accidents, after those accidents, the legal case wasn't clear as to who is going to pay for the accident, who is going to compensate the victim. The driver who was sitting there, or the car manufacturing company who has made the autonomous driverless car, who? No, clarity is not there. So this is one aspect of security. There are many reasons from the point of view of safety and security as to why AI should be regulated. Similarly, if you come to think of it from the perspective of GS paper 2, from the perspective of polity, the responsibility and accountability, these two are crucial things in the application of any technology. Unless the accountability and responsibilities are pinpointed, then it is very difficult to regulate in that sector. So there must be clear-cut responsibility as to from where the data is taken, how the data is stored, and how the data is used, because artificial intelligence, for its training, requires huge amount of data. So from the regulatory perspective, it is important that AI has clarity on accountability aspect. From the perspective of governance, it is hugely important that the personal data be protected. Personal data, it's part of right to privacy. Right to privacy is part of fundamental right, as it has been declared in the Puttaswamy judgment by the Supreme Court of India. There are international conventions that recognize personal data right to privacy as crucial human rights. So in this aspect, it is important that they be regulated in lines with general data protection regulation of AI. European Union has general data protection regulation. This is most of the countries, they have the legal architecture to protect personal data, not concerning only AI. But the thing is, as you understand, that AI feeds into huge amount of data. It's the data that increases the intelligence of artificial intelligence. It learns by itself using machine learning and deep learning technologies, but but it needs data. So the application of AI inadvertently will source huge amount of data from the surrounding. So it's a question of right to privacy of the citizens. Then there's a huge question of ethics and fairness. You might be aware of this case. In 2015, Amazon, it started to vet the application that it receives in the career section. As you understand, it's a big company, huge number of people will be applying to get a job there. So it's difficult many a times for the HR team to vet the applications, the CVs. They employed artificial intelligence. And the result was that the machine was biased towards men, because it will have some algorithm to look into the applications and it will check the history, the track record of the company. And in majority of the cases, the men were performing better or were in the higher position because of the biased initial recruitment, maybe. But somehow looking into the history, artificial intelligence was giving preference to the CVs of male applicants, and it made a big news. It is a case of huge social bias. In many cases, it has been observed that in the passport verification, they use artificial intelligence when they take the photograph to see whether the person has blinked or not. And those technologies are more used in case of Asians. There's a huge cases. Many a times it has been found that the social rejections of beneficiaries claim, it's more in particular region among particular community. There has been huge number of cases. Even the facial recognition technology, it is considered to be biased towards particular races. It's a question of ethics and fairness. So we have covered GS3, GS2, GS1, and GS4 in this short piece of answer. So this is what answer writing is about. I'm not here to give you exact reasons as to why artificial intelligence must be regulated. Of course, you will learn that. But the greater part of the learning is that you understand, given a question of science and technology, how would you approach it? That's my job primarily, to teach you here. And this is how you go about it. You can do the self-evaluation of your answer. You can have the confidence that you have written a good answer. If you can find in your answer good examples and wide coverage of dimensions. You have written about economy, you have written about environment, you have written about society, you might have written about history, art and culture, you have written about polity, governance, you've written about social justice, you have written about ethical considerations, good. Then you are good. If you have good content, if you have good number of examples, you will get good marks. This is the heart, the soul of answer writing. There were two parts in the question. This is how you go about writing the first part. And then the second part was suggest a way forward. You have to suggest a way forward. Suggest a way forward, and the question is in the context of regulatory vacuum. So you have to suggest certain measures. There will be simplistically few things that you can do. First of all, for any kind of regulation, you have a general data protection architecture. You have a general policy. You have the vision and the mission statement. Then what do you have? After having a policy, you have a piece of legislation. After having piece of legislation, you have regulatory bodies who will do the regulation as per the legal mandate in the legislation. You have these three things. And then you deploy science and technology, and then you do training to the manpower and those kind of stuff. This is a general architecture for regulation of anything, for regulation of artificial intelligence, for regulation of any technology that's there making round in news. You have to have this basic architecture. This is how regulatory architecture works. You have to have policy, you have legislation, you need to have regulatory body that will be using the policy and legislation to regulate. And then you need to have some administrative mechanism. You fill it with trained manpower. And then you use technology to better aid in the process of regulation. That's it. So once you know this basic architecture, you can fit it anywhere. So how would you be regulating AI? For AI, you need to have the general data regulation architecture, maybe in line with general data protection regulation, GDPR of European Union, right? And then what do you have? You have laws, you have legislations, you have bodies. You need to have some interdepartmental coordination. China already has said a multi-ministry task force to give recommendations on responsible development of and deployment of AI. You need to have independent regulatory body. You need to have independent advisory bodies also. For example, in France, they have established a high council for the evaluation of artificial intelligence. They have named it the High Council for the Evaluation of Artificial Intelligence. It is an independent advice-giving body that give recommendations on the development and use of AI. Similarly, you need to have AI ethics board. City of Toronto. You will be surprised that the city of Toronto is the first city to establish world's first AI ethics board to provide guidance in terms of application of artificial intelligence within the local administration. Then you have policies, you have laws, you have institutions. Then what do you want? You want trained manpower in that particular realm. You need to have AI training. For example, South Korea, they have a ministry, their ministry called as Ministry of Science and ICT. They have established a certification program for AI systems to ensure that the developers are used. The developers, they design the AI system in such a way that they meet certain standards for safety, security, and ethical considerations, right? And then what I told you, then you use technology to aid the process of regulation. You need technological regulation. Many companies, Google, Microsoft, IBM, they all have released open source toolkits to understand if at all there's a bias in that data set that the machine learning model using artificial intelligence is using. Many a times the answer to technological challenge comes from technology itself. So when you're writing answer to science and tech paper, although you'll be writing general regulatory mechanisms about policies and advisory bodies, regulatory bodies that concerns the governance structure, because the question is such, you have to write about governance and general regulatory administration, but use technology as well, always. The answer to problem related to science and tech mostly comes from science and tech. Solution mostly lies where the problem is. If you're having problem from supercomputers, quantum computers, they break the encryption. The traditional encryption will no more work in front of quantum computer. So the problem is in quantum computing, it is very, very fast. And you know the answer to it, how do we manage the encryption problem? Because the traditional cryptography won't work in front of the high speed of quantum computer. The answer comes from quantum computing itself. The answer comes from quantum technology. We have quantum key distribution, right? So this is the general rule. If you're having problem with science and technology, the answer will also come from science and technology. And many a times the regulatory mechanism, it always has a lag compared to the technological development. So it's very difficult to have a watertight regulatory mechanism that will work across time and space. So it is always better to have a common understanding on acceptable behavior by all stakeholders, by the developers, by researchers, by professors, by government, by the big tech giants. We all must come together to have a common understanding on acceptable behavior regarding use of that technology. So it will not lapse. It will not lapse like regulation. It will not lag like regulation. So it is mostly coming from the front of ethics, ethical considerations, internal kind of regulation that people may have if we generally accept a common minimum standard for use of technology, be it AI, be any other technology. Now, in the conclusion, generally what happens, 90% or at least 80% of the stuff that you write, that is exactly what has been asked. You don't write things which not have been asked, but it is in the conclusion where you get the opportunity to write something that has not been asked. Suppose they were discussing, they only asked about the problems concerning AI. Then in the conclusion, you may write some prescription, some solution concerning AI. But since they already have asked a way forward, so you can write something that may not have been asked in the question, but it's a good point to have an end note there, and that will become your conclusion. In the conclusion, I have mentioned here that the regulation must be accommodative to ensure that they do not hamper the growth of AI market in the long term. It should not be the case of over-regulation. Whenever you talk about regulation, it's good to talk about the balanced approach. The regulation should not throttle the development of that technology or that sector. It's very, very important that regulation should not become the case of over-regulation. So that's the long and short of it. If you have any other question, if you practice any other question of science and tech, practice on this line. It will help you, it will guide you, it will give you a basic understanding that whether you have written a fulfilling answer or not. That's about science and tech. Now we'll quickly come to the question of ethics. There are two questions. One is case study and one is the question from section A. We'll take up the question from section A first. The question is this: ethics is doing more than law requires and less than the law allows. It's a beautiful question. The follow-up part of the question is, what do you understand by this statement? Justify your answer with illustrations. They have asked for illustrations. You have to give good number of illustrations, 2 to 3 illustrations. What do you understand by this statement? Now, I'll quickly tell you, this is a beautiful question, and questions like this keep on appearing in your paper. UPSC has asked umpteen number of times the relation between ethics and law, or the general nature of ethics. See, in 2016, UPSC has asked, laws and ethics are considered to be two tools for controlling human conduct so as to make it more conducive to the civilized social existence. Discuss how they achieve this objective and giving examples show how they differ in their approaches. The question was on laws and ethics. This kind of question UPSC has asked many number of times. See, this question of 2022, UPSC has asked, ethics is knowing the difference between what you have the right to do and what is right to do. Many a times you have right to do certain things, but that is not the right thing to be done. And knowing that difference, that is ethics. UPSC has asked in many ways as to what do you understand by ethics? What exactly is ethics? What kind of behavior do you show that it will be called as ethical behavior? It's a fundamental question, the answer to which you must know, because UPSC in one form or the other will keep on asking this every year. See, in 2018, UPSC has asked, given this statement, this is a quote from Tirukkural, falsehood takes the place of truth when it results in unblemished common good. Generally speaking, saying lies, being dishonest, untruthful is not considered ethical, but it is the nature of ethics that if falsehood is bringing unblemished common good for everybody, then it will be ethical to lie. A falsehood will take the place of truth. This is the fluid nature of ethics. The point I'm trying to tell you is that UPSC asks this fundamental thing many times in different forms. So you have to know the answer as to what do you understand by ethics. If you know the answer to this simple question in a proper format, then you can use it somewhere within the paper, that is for sure. And UPSC will ask some question related to this common theme, most surely, because every year UPSC does ask in one form or the other. So just like I gave you a simple strategy for science and tech, I'll also talk about just in 2 minutes so that we can wind up the answer pretty fast, so that you have something in your hand that will act as a compass to guide you as to how to go about writing the answer. This is your syllabus. This is your syllabus. And your syllabus can be divided into 4 dimensions: psychology, sociology, philosophy, and public administration or governance. So all the points that are written there, if you can reclassify them, you will see that here you have the points of public administration, concept of public service, concept of probity, information sharing, transparency, right to information, code of ethics, code of conduct, citizen charter, work culture, and so on and so forth. Initially, the points that you have, they are the points of psychology, points which are within the individual. You have values, you have attitude, you have aptitude, you have emotional intelligence. This is psychology. Then you have certain sections in your syllabus where you'll see the points of sociology. For example, you have here role of family, society, and educational institutions in inculcating values, reformers and administrators, lessons from lives and teachings of great leaders. These are the sections of sociology. And you have philosophy as well, written very succinctly, but it's an important part of your syllabus. Contribution of moral thinkers and philosophers from India and the world. So the thing is that your syllabus looks like this. It is made up of 4 components: psychology, sociology, philosophy, and public administration. These are 4 traditional disciplines. And this paper has been made from taking the components from making a hybrid of these 4 traditional disciplines, right? Now, why I'm showing you this? Whenever I'll write an answer, an open-ended answer, questions which are not very specific. If they ask you what is emotional intelligence, can it be developed? So you'll have to be specific concerning EI. But if the question is open-ended, as it is in most of the cases, then what you have to do is you have to touch on these 4 components. Just like for science and tech, I gave you a system to go about writing the answer. Any open-ended question in ethics paper, I will go about thinking like this. I'll write certain points of psychology, sociology, philosophy, and public administration, and my job will be done. If I'm not getting the head and tail of it, if I'm not understanding where to begin, where to end, if I touch these 4 boxes and I have written 4 points for that particular answer, my job is done. I just have to give examples, introduction, conclusion, and then I'll write a decent answer. That's the plan. The other way of looking at the same thing is like this. On individual level, psychology basically operates at individual level, sociology operates at social level, and then you have certain philosophies and you have points of public administration. That's the entire of your syllabus. If any question comes anywhere in ethics paper, this is the PPT that I come back to. This is how I think. So I have 2 questions to discuss with you, and this is how I'll be going about answering the questions. Okay, you just see how I'm doing it. Ethics is doing more than the law requires. Whenever the question has 2 parts, you go part by part. First, handle the first part and then write the second part. That's it. As the question progresses, so must your answer. Ethics is doing more than law requires. So this is kind of asking, what do you understand by ethics? It's kind of inquiring into the question, what is ethics? So it's a kind of one definition that they have given you in the question. Ethics is doing something which is more than what law requires, but less than what law allows. So if you do something like this, then that is ethics. So it's one definition of ethics. When you get a question where you have 2 components or 2 things, and the question is based on both of them, one simplistic way of writing the introduction is that you write on both the components. So suppose if the question is on objectivity and integrity, then you write what is objectivity, what is integrity, and then you go to the body. But a better way and more mature way of writing the introduction is not just to define the terms. If they are taking 2 components in the question, you also take 2 components and establish the relation between the 2 components. Or you can define also, that will also be a decent introduction, but a better introduction would be to take the essence of the question and begin from there. The question is based on ethics and law. So you establish the relation between ethics and law in the introduction. Law is the subset of ethics. Thomas Hobbes has said that law is a subset of ethics and laws have ethical foundations. So laws comes out of ethics, but everything that ethics is, that's not law. It's a subset of ethics, and ethics fills the gap left by the law. That's the relation in short between ethics and the law. Now, you can make Venn diagram like this. In the legal realm, not everything is covered. There's things lying outside the legal realm, and they are managed, handled better, governed better by ethics. But there are areas of intersection between both of them. Of course, right? But we are concerned more with this, ethics. Ethics is doing more than law requires. So I'll take this first part. Now, see, if you do not understand as to how to go about writing answer to any open-ended question like this, then just follow 4 simple steps. Look at the syllabus. First of all, you have to be a little bit familiar with what's there in the syllabus. Just try to touch on the 4 components, the 4 aspects of your syllabus, right? So I'll write something for psychology, I'll write something for sociology, I'll write something for philosophy, and I'll write something for public administration. And I'll be dead happy, I'll be dead sure that I've written a good answer. That's how a good answer looks like. So I'll also use the phrase and vocabulary of the paper. I'll also chip in some examples, some quotations, name of some moral philosophers. That's it. But the line of thinking will be to touch on the syllabus. That's the heart, that's the soul of writing mains answer. So how do I go about? I'll try to look at the psychological aspect. Psychological aspect meaning you have values there, you have emotion, you have conscience, you have cognition, you have attitude, you have aptitude, and you have individual behavior. These are there in the syllabus. You know that if you're familiar with the syllabus, you've gone through the basic classes, you would know. So ethics is doing more than law requires. So I'm trying to find out what ethics is. Ethics is something good. Ethics is something that helps the human race. So if anything that benefits you in the four boxes, the four components, that is something which is good for you. So you're looking for the answer to the question, what is the nature of ethics? What is ethics? So if you can just show that this is something that benefits you in four ways, in the four boxes, you as an individual and the whole society as a whole, then that's a good thing. That's a good thing. And that could be ethics, right? So ethics is doing more than what law requires you. You have to do more than what law requires out of you, because that will help you to develop, turn into a moral agent. Immanuel Kant has said that it is our duty to become a moral agent. So you can become the moral agent, the rational creature of Aristotle, or the moral agent of Immanuel Kant, or a person with a beautiful mind of APJ Abdul Kalam, if you do more than what is bare minimum expected or required from you, from law. Gandhiji has said the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. So if you go beyond the law and lose yourself in the service of others, that will help you to develop into a better moral agent. So that is ethics. That is why it is required by ethics to do more than what is required by law, because it will help you in this way. I've checked one box. This is a psychological box. This is a psychological point of inculcating values in me, right? So it is within me. So it is in the realm of psychology. Now I'll move to sociology, how it will help society. Because if you do more than law, it will help the vulnerable section. You must have heard about Compassionate Kozhikode. This is an initiative led by Prashant Nair. He's the dean of Kerala, you know. So the initiative is that to collect the leftovers from the restaurants and distribute them to the poor. But this was not required by law out of him to do this as a DM. And there are many DMs, you would know umpteen number of examples. You would know the very famous People's Road, Armstrong Pame of Manipur. He collected the money from crowdfunding. The monsoon was coming and the road was not there and the farmers couldn't sell their produce to the market. They will not be able to take it. The children won't be able to go to school. The patients won't be able to go to hospital. The entire civilization there will come to standstill after the monsoon rains, because the road is not the Pakka road. Now he did it. He constructed that road despite the fund not being there with the district administration. That is jumping over the hoop. That is taking some extra effort. That is why it is ethics. It requires you to take in some extra effort, do something more mandated by law, because that's the way in the financial crunch you can serve the vulnerable section. So you have checked the sociological box. You have checked psychological box. It will help you to develop as a moral agent. It will help the vulnerable section. It will make governance more efficient. Now you have come to public administration. This is the third box I'll check. Probity cannot be ensured by law alone. You must have heard the famous case of Divya Devarajan. She was transferred to Adilabad. And there was some tribal unrest concerning Gondi people. And there has been some effort taken previously as well to learn the Gondi language. Learn the Gondi language. People have tried, the local administrators, but they couldn't. She took the extra effort to learn the language and then be more persuasive and talk with the people. And then she was able to integrate some of the activities of the tribal society, quell the rebellion there. And that was a superb case of ethical governance. If the government wanted, they could have quelled the rebellion by force as well. But learning the language and then talking with emotional intelligence and then putting out your arms to welcome the tribal people to be part of the development process, that is extraordinary. That's why ethics requires you to do more than what is mandated by the law. That is ethics. And now you have to check the fourth box, the philosophy. You have done psychology, you have done sociology, you have done public administration. Now you have to touch on philosophy. Now you write any any good philosophies that come to your mind. And if you have good content, there will be no dearth of philosophies running through your mind. There is a Plato's idea of ideal society, where the parts, different people in this, different citizens, people living in society, they live like cells of organism, where different cells, how does cells in organism work? Different cells are continuously working for the welfare of the whole, and the whole benefits the parts. The whole gives the nutrients to all the parts of the body. So that's how, that was the idea of Plato as to how a society must exist. You have, UPSC has given you a quotation of Erik Erikson in 2020. Life does not make sense without interdependence. This is a quotation. There are many quotations that UPSC give in the paper. There are many statements which are given as contextual statement. I would recommend you to memorize them and use them in answer writing. So if you see here, what I have basically done, I have checked the 4 boxes: psychology, sociology, public administration, and philosophy. And I have reasoned with example as to why ethics is doing more than what law requires. But it is also doing less than what law allows. Not to answer this question, to answer any question rather, I'll think the same way. Now I'll have to just look into 4 boxes and to think of 4 reasons. So sometimes I'll write 4 reasons, sometimes I may write 3 reasons, sometimes only 2 reasons if there are many parts to the question. But how do you answer this part? Ethics is doing less than what the law allows. If you do less than what law allows, then you are inculcating higher human value in you, like empathy, compassion, perseverance, sacrifice. If you're using electricity as much as you can, as far as you're paying the bill, you have the right to use as much as you want. But that is not ethical. That's not good for environment. Even if you have the capacity to pay for it, legally there will be no charge against you. Law allows you to do it, but you don't have to do it. Why don't you have to do it? How will I reason for it? I'll reason for it, giving reason from 4 boxes. Look, man, it will help me inculcate some value in me. It will improve my conscience. It will improve my attitude. That's all the psychological point. I'll take any one aspect. It is very common and it will come very easily and handy to you, the value part. Write certain value that will be that will be enhanced in you if you do that particular thing. So, and that becomes the reason as to why ethics is doing less than what law allows, right? So this is another quotation that UPSC has asked in last mains. Judge your success by what you had to give what you had to give up in order to get it. This is a quotation on sacrifice. Judge your success by what you had to give up in order to get it. This is a quotation that UPSC has asked in the paper last year, right? So how would you make this good? How would you judge your success? By seeing what you have given up. It is sacrifice. And even if law mandates you to do, allows you to do something, you don't do it. That is what ethics is, right? Laws protects individuals. Laws exist to protect individuals, but ethics protects everyone in the society. But this is sociological point. If you have just observed, I will never write it like a sociological point, psychological point, but this is how I will think, and I'll generate points very fast. So this is psychology, because I've talked about values within individual. This is sociology. Ethics is knowing the difference between what you have the right to do and what is right to do. I've shown you this as a question in the beginning, and this is a philosophy. You can take it as a philosophy. It's a quotation by Potter Stewart, but UPSC has asked this, right? So I have checked philosophical box as well. And now all I have to do is check the public administration box. It leads to ethical administration, avoiding the use of force by administration during democratic protest. The local administration, the concerned civil servant, he has the right to ask for lathi charge, to use force. It is within the realm of the law. That's not violation of law. If he wishes, he can do it. He can ask for firing as well in the air to disperse the crowd, or he can use a tear gas. But that's very painful to the protesters, or maybe he can use a safer option of water cannon. It's up to him or her. Laws allow you to do it, but you do not do it because in the spirit of ethical administration. So that answers your 2 parts. Ethics is doing more than law requires, 4 reasons from 4 boxes, and less than the law allows, 4 reasons from 4 boxes. That's it. This is what I will always do. My brain thinks like this. It gets easy. You get more comfortable. You won't have problem thinking about the answer to any question. It will take time, of course. You have to gather content and you have to do a little bit of brainstorming to train your mind to think like this. But once you have trained, you'll have a way in the dark. You'll have a compass in the mid of the ocean. You won't go astray. You'll feel confident. You'll feel in control. Okay. Then in conclusion, you always have the opportunity to write something which has not been asked, but is an important aspect in the overall discussion of the topic. So although there are differences in laws and ethics, as the question itself is pointing out, but we must try to bring harmony and to have a common aim. Because in long run, laws work only if it is in harmony with the moral standard of society. Otherwise, the law has to change because there is social dissonance, the violation of rights of people. In the long run, they must work in harmony, strengthening each other. So that you can write in the conclusion. I will come to the case study. I hope you have read the case study and you have come here. Just for a quick recapitulation, the case was something like this, that Sundar is the CEO of the multinational company. And being the CEO, you understand the CEOs have the responsibility to keep the company profitable. That's one of the core responsibility. They also have the responsibility to keep the jobs and the employment coming from the company, to cut down on the job losses, right? Then as a citizen and also as a position holder of higher authority, you also have responsibility towards society. You also have responsibility towards environment. So the case here is that Sundar is the CEO of multinational company specializing in the production and distribution of agricultural products. And this company has purchased large farms in a particular area, but that area is undergoing the problem of water scarcity. So there's already proper problem of water crisis. There's quite water crisis in the making. There's a problem of water scarcity. And this company deals with agricultural products. So it requires water. It has a plan of making a dam as well. So the dilemma that Sundar right now is, there has been large investment gone of the company to purchase these large farms. And the investment is also coming up for construction of dam. But the problem is all these projects are going to use water, right? And there is problem of water scarcity there. So what he should be doing, how he should be going about, there are 5 questions. As you know that UPSC from the last year has started to ask 5 parts in the case. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge for anyone to try to answer the case in 250 words. Because there are 5 parts. If you try very hard, if you try to be in the word limit, you have to write 1 part in 50 words. You'll also have to write a little bit of short introduction and conclusion. So you'll have less than 50 words in 1 part. So it's very, very challenging, very, very challenging. And they also ask, what are your options? And they also ask to critically analyze the options. So you write 4 options and merits and demerits of options. You will shoot 100 in 1 part. So it's very, very challenging to write answer to this kind of case in 250 words. So what I suggest is learn to write fast. So even if you have to write 300, 320, 350 words, you can still write in the stipulated time. If you breach the word limit, but you do not breach the time limit, you learn to write fast. So practice writing answers, attempt mocks. You have taken the test series, you finish off that test series, continue, be disciplined, write many, many tests. Prepare your mind and your hand. That training has to be there in the test series to complete this ethics paper, because it is challenging. It's really, really challenging. The paper has become very, very lengthy. So you have to develop this ability, this physical aptitude of writing fast with legibility. Now coming to the case, the first part of the question is this. First part of the case, what are the potential consequences of the company's continued use of excessive water resource for the local communities and the environment? They're asking potential consequence. UPSC has started to ask in this format the potential consequence of some action. The potential consequence of any action, I would recommend you to follow a structure for this. If you're looking at the consequence, the first thing that possibly will be influenced by any action is value. Your syllabus begins from value. Syllabus begins from value. This is where your syllabus begins. Human values. So most of the time, your answer must also begin from here. So your answer and the syllabus will be in sync. So if they ask about what are the potential consequences, begin from core of your entire paper, which are values. Talk about attitude. talk about cognition, talk about conscience, and then you come out of individuals, talk about the responsibilities and inner dissonance that the person will have. Because in law, you're guilty once you are proven guilty, but in ethics, you're guilty the moment you have thought of some unethical action. The moment you have thought of doing it, you are guilty in the court of conscience. So there, the immediate consequence, it's not just what's going to happen on ground at social level, protest and absence of trust and loss of social capital, that of course will happen. But when they ask consequence, the first thing is that you will brutalize your soul. You will erode your conscience. You will erode your value system. That's the consequence. And that's a big consequence in the realm of this paper. So you begin from within the person, whatever is within you, what's within you, you have emotion, you have cognition, you have value, you have conscience, you have attitude. That's within you. So they will be affected. Then you come out, then you keep enlarging the circle. At the social level, there are certain things. At social level, there are certain values like fraternity. There are values, there are the values of cooperation. So at social level, there is social capital that different sections enjoy among each other, or the companies or MNCs they enjoy, or the government enjoy among the public. So in the social realm, see what are the things and how they will be affected. Then look at the public administration, increase it even more. Look into the domain of public administration as to what will happen. What will happen? The points that you have in public administration, there's citizen charter, there's accountability, there's social audit, there's probity, right? There are values of civil servants. There's ethical governance, good governance. What will happen to these things? Look at that consequence, right? So just keep it enlarging. Look at the philosophies that has guided us, our freedom struggle from ancient time, how our country has been guided by the philosophies, some of the Gandhian philosophies of trusteeship, Gandhian philosophy of Sarvodaya through Antodaya. What will happen to these? They are the consequence. Didn't I tell you, I always think like this, and it makes the job very simple. So if you think from these 4 boxes or these 4 circles, things will be easy. What are the potential consequences? You begin from within the person, you come to the social domain, then look at public administration things, and then talk about certain philosophies. Bas. The next question is, how can the company involve and consider the perspective of the local communities in decision-making related to water crisis? How can the companies involve and consider their perspective? How do you involve anyone? See, involving someone is something that happens at the juncture of you and somebody else. So it will be happening at the periphery of the company, the management of the company, and the people. There, the involvement will happen, right? That is a phenomena that will happen at junction. But beyond the junction on 2 sides, something also must go on, and that will help to involve. Okay, so the question is, how can the company involve? How do you involve someone? You involve someone, first of all, by your own willingness. Begin from there. Where does the syllabus begin? The syllabus begins from values. So your answer must also begin somewhere from there. You have the value of inclusivity. If you have this, that is the beginning of the process of involvement. You understand? So you can talk about other things, like you will partner with the local organizations and NGOs, and you will have social audits and other things. But that's not all your syllabus. This is not a polity paper. It has certain components that you must also touch upon. So first of all, the involvement should be from your value expression. You express certain values. You be tolerant. You be inclusive. And then you express certain attitude. You show democratic attitude in the process of decision making. So you are ready for it. You have a forum where people will come and give their ideas. And so that you listen to them and you're really serious about implementing them. So you talk about values and attitude first. Now, this is the difference. Had this been a question of polity paper, you talk about regulatory mechanism, governance mechanism as to how the involvement of people is possible. But this is not all about that. Although it has a component, I have told you there are 4 components in this paper. So you have a component of public administration. So you'll talk about social impact assessment. You talk about social audit. You talk about work culture. You talk about tools of good governance. So you will write about things of administration as well. But that's not all. That's the thing. Write about certain philosophies. Write about philosophy of Sarvodaya through Antodaya. Write about philosophy of trusteeship of Gandhiji. Talk about how you have to bring in your imagination certain philosophies as to that will help in the cause of involvement of people in the decision-making process. Okay, so this is how you have to begin. This is how always you have to begin. This is how always you have to write the answer. Touch on most of the aspects of the syllabus. So you've written about values and democratic attitude. This is psychology, right? And these are the points of public administration. UPSC has once asked about social audit. This is about sociology also, involving the people. Once you have transparency, once you have better work culture, you'll have more trust, you'll enjoy more social capital, things like that, right? So this is how you have to write the answer to the ethics paper, questions in ethics paper. What ethical principles should guide Sundar's decision in this situation? Now, this is a very simplistic question. There are certain ethical principles that you have to write upon. Whenever you have to write general thing, keep in mind that you have to write from various perspectives. For example, principle of non-malfeasance. It means non-malfeasance means that you do not cause harm or injury to others. Principle of beneficence. It means that you do good and you promote the well-being of others. You respect the autonomy, the right of self-determination of the local community. This is also accepted in the UN Charter, principle of autonomy. Then principle of justice. There are various concepts of justice. And one of the concepts of justice, called as distributive principle of justice, is that the benefit and the burden, it must be distributed fairly. Now, who will draw the benefit? If you have the large farmland and you grow the agricultural products, use the local resources, nutrients in the soil and the water beneath and the local atmosphere, and you're using the entire ambience and making business. So the MNC, the Sundar's company, is going to make huge profit, but the burden of water scarcity is going to come on local people. So district mineral fund, you must have heard about it. In the districts where the mining goes on, certain amount of revenue that is earmarked for the development of local people. Why? Because the benefit and the burden must be distributed evenly, fairly, right? So this is the principle. Principle of corporate social responsibility. Principle of sarvodaya through antyodaya. The good of one isn't good of all. So these are the principles, but you must also add certain principles concerning CEO. Sundar is CEO of a company, and that entails something. When you are at the top of the organization, then you also have to maintain efficiency in your organization. That is also your moral duty. So there are stakeholders in your company, and there are shareholders in your company. They also have the interest that you make good business. So the principle of economic profitability or economic efficiency for the company, that must also be added here. So you write the general principles. These mostly will be on your fingertips if you have done a little bit of answer practice, or will eventually be on your fingertips. But this is the kind of question that has asked the arguments that you use in general in writing answers. So your answer generally revolve around these principles. So one of the part of the case was just to list down the ethical principles that should guide your decision making in the situation. Then the fourth part is, what option do Sundar have? And critically evaluate. This is what I was talking about. If you list down the 4 options, it will be 40 words. And then you also have to critically evaluate them. Previously, we used to write answer where you give one option and then you make the columns of merits and demerits. So 1, 2, 3 merit, 1, 2, 3 demerit. But now you do not have the time and space for that. If the question has 5 subparts, this is only one subpart. And ideally, it has to be answered in 50 words, but that won't happen. It is impossible to answer this question in 50 words. So you extend a little bit, maybe 80, 90, 95, maybe. But you have to learn to write very, very fast. So you have to write 1 merit and 1 demerit. That will suffice. Because the format of the question has become so lengthy, you cannot afford to write more than that. So generally, the option that anyone will have in this situation is to prioritize the interest of the company. So you go ahead with the construction of dam and you do your planned business without much ethical considerations. The other option is to prioritize the interest of local communities. You listen to them, their problem, empathize with them, have empathy, be compassionate. So you do not do anything that harm the situation, already worsening situation of water crisis. That's the second option. Or propose a compromise between the interest of the company and the local communities. This is an agro-tech company, right? So there are other options with the company as well. Maybe you can make smaller dams, or maybe you can use water-saving technologies. Maybe you can use alternative sources of water for the company's farm. maybe you can use some technology to draw the water in the form of moisture from the atmosphere, right? So technologically, you can find a midway. Or in general, people develop 3 options, but it will be nice if you develop 4 options. And one of the options that you can develop in a situation like this is to have an independent investigation or an independent advisory body that will be objective, unbiased, and do according to the expert advice of that independent advisory body. That is a possible 4th option. So you will very easily be able to write the merit and demerit of these 4 options. I'm not doing that for you, but the point here is when you are asked to generate option, try to develop 3 to 4 options. If you develop 4 options, generate 4 options, that is more impressive. That shows that you have a wider. Generally, what will happen? You go to one extreme, the second option, the other extreme, and the third option somewhere midway. That's easy breezy, and that's very mundane as well. Try to develop 4 options. That gives a better impression. The 5th part of the case is which option should Sundar choose to balance the company's moral responsibility to address the water crisis with its economic and financial interest. So how to balance the company's moral responsibility with financial interest? Which option should Sundar choose? So it's very obvious. The Sundar as the CEO must choose the option number 3, where it says propose a compromise between the interest of the company and the local community. The merits and demerits already have been written here. So you do not have to give reasons in the form of merits. You do not have to list down the merit of this option again. Rather, you have to give reasoning from different perspective. How, as to how it is going to be useful for everyone. Remember, ethics does not help only the others in the society. The practitioner of ethics is also the beneficiary. It is said that ethics is quintessential in man's life. So if we are doing something good, you just have to show as to how different stakeholders will be benefiting. Some may be in the short run, some may be in the long run, right? But overall, everyone will be the winner. So in this final part, you have to justify using some philosophies, some quotations, some reasons from public administration, some theories there, some principle, to show that everyone will be benefiting. And the benefit is not only financial every time. The benefit is also not only environmental. If you satisfy your conscience and you feel happy, then that's also a benefit. If you're avoiding the moral erosion of your character and you're maintaining your integrity, that is also your benefit. So if you just synchronize your thinking in terms of syllabus begins from values. And if you can safeguard the values, that's a benefit. Immanuel Kant has said, there are 2 things that awe me the most. 1 is the starry sky above me, and 2 is the moral law within me. इस पूरे जहां में सिर्फ 2 ही चीज गजब की है. एक सितारों से भरा आसमान, और दूसरा मेरे अंदर का ईमान. If you can loosely translate that in Hindi, this is how it is. Immanuel Kant got this engraved on his grave. He liked it so much. The point is, values are important. Values are very important. Your syllabus begins from values. And if values are safeguarded, it will help you. And you have to reason as to how it's going to help you. Some of the reasons are given here. You can read that. But the point is, whenever you give reasoning from all the stakeholders. Everyone should be the winner. If you can show that, the answer would be good. That's it. If you have any doubts, you ask me. Otherwise, we have come to the end of the discussion from my section, and the next teacher will take up the discussion now. I hope you have benefited something from the session and you absorbed it. You'll get the PPT after the class, go through the PPT and try to think, do a little bit of brainstorming as to how you should have gone about writing the answer to these questions and how you can improve it better. And you mail me as to, in this way, this particular answer can be improved, or this is my input from my side. Be a little more participative and keep learning from the guidance that you have got today in the discussion. Incorporate that in the coming answers. Only then it's going to be helpful. Thank you very much. I'll take leave now. And if you please carry forward with your discussion.
ये वहाँ नहीं आ रहा. Hello everyone, am I audible? विकास जी देखना एक बार. Okay, so this question was from the section of polity, as you can see, and can be said to be one of the easiest question from the section, and it basically deals with the current happenings which is going on regarding the so-called friction between the judiciary and the executive. So the question was framed according to that because the government has raised this issue of judicial accountability. Now, the question was here that given the growing demand for judicial accountability in India, examine the need for reforms in the process of appointment. So here you had to identify the issue of the growing demand for judicial accountability. Now, this growing demand is because of the government's focus on the fact that the functioning of collegium is more or less opaque. क्या हो रहा है? Okay, and because of the opaque functioning of the collegium, the whole issue has erupted. Now, see, we need to understand one thing here is that the appointment is done by the president under Article 124 and 217, but the recommendation of names is provided by the collegium. This aspect has to be very clearly provided in your answer. So the collegium, which comprises the 5 senior most judges of Supreme Court, only recommends name. But the issue is here is that after the second and third judges case, these recommendations of the judiciary has to be mandatorily followed by the government, unless and until there are some issues which comes up during the investigation by the government. So other than that, more or less, the recommendation as provided by or as suggested by the collegium comprising of 5 senior judges of the Supreme Court of India has to be compulsorily or mandatorily followed or abided by the government, despite the fact that the president, despite the fact that the the judges of Supreme Court and High Court are appointed by the President of India. So the question focuses on the need for reforms in the procedure for appointment to ensure judicial accountability. So this was the demand of the question, and your answer should be focusing on this particular demand. And based on this, what you need to highlight is about, obviously, the fact that they function in more or less behind closed doors or in an opaque manner. There are growing issues or growing concerns regarding nepotism. There are growing concerns regarding the fact that the judiciary is not of late, no single jurist has been appointed, or no single distinguished jurist has been appointed as a judge of the Supreme Court, in spite of the fact that a provision has been provided in the Constitution of India. So, as you can see, the introduction to your question states that the government has raised the issue of lack of judicial accountability, as names of candidates to be appointed as High Court and Supreme Court judge are recommended by the collegium comprising 5 senior most judges of the Supreme Court. Now, why there is a need for reform in the appointment process? Because of these reasons. And these reasons includes issue of opaqueness in the functioning of collegium, narrow pool for selection of candidates, as it reflects lack of consideration of suitable candidates from diverse socioeconomic backgrounds. Now, this is another issue which has been constantly raised by the government. Another issue highlighted is even distinguished jurists not considered for appointment under Article 124, Clause 3, Clause C. Now, see, if you do not remember the constitutional provisions, do not worry. You can at least highlight this particular aspect. Next is disproportionate representation from the bar. Now, as we all know that appointment to judges of High Court and Supreme Court are also done directly from the bar. That is from those active advocates who are practicing. But there is no specific criteria. There is no specific selection criteria for those advocates. So what is the ground for selection? This becomes a bit questionable. Next is nepotism in appointment, favoring members of judicial family, as a recent report, or I think a 2015 report has highlighted the same, that approx 30 to 40% of the judges in the High Court and Supreme Court are from the members of the judges or from the judicial family. It violates separation of power. Why? Because effectively the judges, while recommending name, are performing an administrative function. So the judiciary is supposed to perform the judicial functions, but effectively through this appointment process, they are doing, or they are performing an administrative task, which should be left to the executive. As also because the aspect of collegium has nowhere been provided or not mentioned in the Constitution of India, and it is a judicial construct based on the second and third judge's case. Next point is judges' involvement in appointments affects core judicial functions. Obviously, because substantial time or quite amount of time is invested in the administrative process. So you can conclude your answer by saying that yes, judicial accountability should be ensured, but making government a part of the collegium is not the only way forward. Yes, it can be the way forward, but not the only way forward. So here what we can say is that judicial accountability is essential, but the government's representation in the collegium is not the only solution. Other mechanisms to ensure judicial accountability includes appointing distinguished jurists, provisions providing specific criteria for appointment even from the bar. So there has to be specific criteria, or rather objective criteria, based on which appointment can be taken, or senior advocates can be appointed directly from the bar. Conducting all India judicial service, as a provision has been provided in the Constitution under Article 312 through Constitution 42nd Amendment. Constituting judicial oversight committee, which was suggested in the Judicial Accountability Bill. And so all these will further improve judicial accountability. So by highlighting all these, you are effectively addressing the demand of the question. So this is with respect to this particular question. Okay.
So hello everyone. The next question is regarding the international relations. It primarily deals with the issue of Global South. The question has been asked about the Global South. I think I am audible enough for you to hear, and I'm visible also to you. If there is any issue, you can tell it. Now that the question asks about Global South, the question has been specifically framed because Global South has recently become a new buzzword. It became a buzzword after External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar talked about the same thing. And primarily after that, in the month of January, India organized Global South Summit. It was organized around 12th or 13th of January this month. So that is the reason why Global South has been in news and can be asked by UPSC for further examinations also. Now, the Global South has been discussed extensively in the DNS as well as the Focus magazine of January month. So you can have an additional reading on the same from there. Now we shall discuss the question and the nature of question what it was asked about. The question says the need to address the common challenges with the developing world prompted India to the voice issue of Global South. So basically it talks about the issues of Global South, referring to the Global South. And question says the main part here is, in this context, highlight the potential challenges. The focus is on challenges that may limit India's ability to emerge as a champion of Global South. So our main body part will include the challenges that India will face to provide a leadership to the Global South. And in our intro, we'll start our answer with the reference to Global South, what Global South is, and what India's role traditionally has been with regard to the Global South. So with the traditional linkage, India's global, basically there is no definition of Global South. Global South is not an organization, neither it is a geographical demarcation. The basic definition of Global South here is, it is a collective informal group of developing and least developed countries. And to answer the second part, what India has been doing, India from the very independence has been playing a crucial role with regard to the Global South or the third world countries, which we have seen in the form of initiatives like NAM, that is the non-aligned movement that India has started right after the independence. And secondly, today also, India on multiple fronts has been working with this. For example, India's plea for reforms at the level of United Nations or the multilateral organization, reforms at the level of WTO, where it asks about the Bali package, and various other measures there which we want reforms. For example, the Bretton Woods institutions, for example, with World Bank and IMF. And even recently, where India has been championing the cause of common but differentiated responsibilities for the issue of climate change. So this has been a traditional role of India in the form of NAM and the current complexity which India's work with the Global South. So this brings us to the main body part, that what is basically then the challenges in India's leadership. Why India cannot emerge, what are the challenges that India will face to emerge as a leader of the Global South. So the first challenge that India will face will be regarding the universalism. Now, India believes in the philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, where it believes that world is one family. And focusing on a region-specific organization or some countries will go against this philosophy of India, that is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The second challenge that India will face is that of trade. Now, in this era of globalization, no country is interdependent of each other. Every country is dependent on each other in some form or other. And the value of global supply chains was even seen during the Russia-Ukraine war. So trade of India has been progressing with countries like United States of America, and India is also extensively pushing for trade and bilateral relationship with the European Union and the United Kingdom, where it has asked for negotiation on FTA. Now, on one hand, this trade will come into the picture, and on the other hand, India has to balance Global South. And the majority of trade of India come through these countries. So this will again hamper India's level of development and engagement with the Global South. The third reason that we can highlight as a challenge to India's leadership of Global South or emerge as a leader of Global South is the presence of China. Now we all know that China engages in what we today know as checkbook diplomacy. It is nothing but China is having huge pockets, and India cannot able to manage the resources that China has at its disposal. So it will become very difficult for India to manage the level of wealth of China and the contribution it can do at the global south level, as China has been extensively pushing in the countries of Africa, for example, and the need to manage the same by India comes at a very hefty cost, as India itself is facing various socio-economic issues at the domestic level. The next issue that we can highlight that will come in the way of India's leadership is the anti-Western orientation. Now, any initiative by the third world countries, whether it was NAM, is seen as anti-Western orientation. And the global south will also be seen as an anti-Western orientation by the developed countries, and which will further hamper India's interest to emerge as a nation, as a leader of global south. The fifth challenge that we can highlight here is the demand of small island developing states. Now, the small island developing states have been critical of India. Though India is championing the cause of climate change, but India is also one of the biggest emitter of carbon, or having the largest carbon footprint. And small island developing states have been demanding reduction of the same. The sixth cause that can be highlighted as a harbinger of India's leadership to the global south is that India focuses on approach. India's focus on approach has been that of Big Brother, or basically it acts as a bully in the South Asian region or in the SAARC region, where we have seen. And this approach, or this image of India as Big Brother or bully, will come into the way of leadership it can provide to the global south. And the last reason that can be highlighted as a harbinger or as an impediment of India's leadership to the global south is related to multilateralism. Now, for global south to function properly, multilateralism is very necessary. And as a trend, it is witnessed over the world that world is going towards regional organization. As many of the regional organizations have emerged in Africa, and also world is also going towards protected economies. Now, all this will go against India's leadership at the level of global south. So what we can conclude? We can conclude in a way that India cannot will to avoid north or as the south, or the developed nation or the developing nations at the side. And India thus need to act as a bridge between the north and the south, or the global south and the developed countries. You have been provided with the sample answer. You can go through the sample answer and check whether you have written on the same lines or not, where we have already discussed the point that are mentioned in the sample answer. So you will now have the next discussion.
Hello, everyone. I hope I'm clearly audible to each and every participant. I'm Jatin Bhadwaj, and I'm going to take the history question. So as you can see on the screen, this was the question number 6, which is from the modern India. Now, when we talk about the basic syllabus of history in terms of modern India can be divided into two. First is, because before going to the question or detailed analysis, we should have basic understanding that in what way a modern India question could be asked. So basically, there are two parts. The first one is with respect to the national movement. And second, I would personally call it as other issues. Now, when you talk about tribals, when you talk about working class, anything, any section part or any other section of modern India, which is not involved with respect to the national movement, anything, let's say we are talking about a particular governor general, his activities, let's say Dalhousie, not talking about India's freedom, India's national movement, that can fall in this category. The first one talks about the national movement, any event that took place in order to justify the freedom. When we talk about Swadeshi, when we talk about Gandhian phase, when we talk about the demands raised by Subhash Chandra Bose or Jawaharlal Nehru, everything which calls for freedom will fall under this. Now, as you can go through the question says that despite various methods, I'm just going to highlight the important key terms in this question, and those key terms are going to be the foundation of your answer. So despite various methods which were employed to achieve Indian independence. Now, the moment we say Indian independence, we can easily see that this question falls in the first category. So in the mains examination also, you are going to get around 2 to 3 questions from modern India. And these 2 to 3 questions can well be divided into these two sections. So try to prepare for the mains examination in this manner only. So various method for Indian independence. Out of these various methods, there was one important method, that was the constitutional method. Now, the moment we say constitutional method, we are actually talking about the legislation. How government actually provided steps to create a set of governance across India before India's independence. Now, how these methods and their consequent successes. So you are going to write answers with respect to the constitutional methods and their respective success. Do not write your answer with respect to the failures of these methods. For example, you are not required to write about the divide and rule theory, which was highlighted in Morley-Minto reforms. That is not a success. That did not cause Indians to ask for its freedom, although it laid down the foundation for divide and rule. So from the entire question, we can say that you are supposed to write your body part into 2 sections. So if I talk about the body, it should be divided into 2. Of course, the first one is that you have to justify various methods. See, the question is not asking about making a list. You are not supposed to make a list of these methods. Gandhian policies, all right, Swarajist, revolutionaries, role by working class. No, the question is not demanding that. The question is saying that there were 2 methods, various methods, out of which one was constitutional. And in this constitutional method, or in the entire question, you have to justify that the constitutional methods were more beneficial than various other methods. This is the basic crux of the answer. If you can do that with your own set of knowledge, with your own arguments, there are hundreds of arguments which you can use on both the sides. Try to justify them, why these methods were limited and why these methods were more beneficial. That's it. That's the demand of the question. Now, in terms of introduction, you can provide the background. Okay, how these 2 methods came into existence, why these methods were there. Okay, why different methods came across, because there were different demand. There were different choices of the people. Like Gandhian choice was different than the choice of Nehru. Then in the body part, justify as what we have discussed. And in the conclusion, you can say, irrespective of both the methods, the final conclusion was that together these methods help India to gain independence. So the conclusion is the consequence of all these steps that were taken. So let's start with the basic understanding of the question. So this is how the question is divided. Various strands of national movement employed diverse strategies like extremism, you can also call it as revolutionaries, satyagraha, of course, the Gandhian policies, revolutionaries, mass agitation, demand for constitutional reforms, and many others. However, the last force here is the constitutional reforms turn out to be most successful. Now, why I'm saying this, why this question was framed, please understand, there was a concept of Poon and there was a concept of Poon Swaraj. And then ultimately, I'll start from the Swaraj first. Swaraj, thanks to Tilak, from Swaraj to Poon Swaraj to independence and partition. Now, the one thing which you will notice in all these methods or all these demands are nothing but the constitutional demand. Be it the participation in the legislation, be it the demand of fundamental right, be it the demand of getting into the legislation at the provinces. You must have read about the elections of 1937. All these were based on the participation of Indians in ruling themselves. There is no concept of Swaraj in this. There is no concept of Gandhian policies like Satyagraha and other, because all these policies were involved in the mass struggle. So in this question, we are going to justify that all these things were actually constitutional reforms. But other methods which we had talked about, for example, extremists, Satyagraha, revolutionary, others, they had their limitation. The first limitation was severely they were repressed by the government. Whether you talk about the Swadeshi movement, whether you talk about non-cooperation movement, Indians were beaten up for raising genuine demands. So they were severely repressed. Then the second was lack of unity. So whenever we are talking about different methods, be it the Gandhian method, revolutionary, mass agitation, you must have heard about that there were differences of the opinion between Gandhi, Nehru, and Bose. This shows that there was lack of unity. There were communal rights. Then communal awards of 1932 also shows that there was lack of unity. Ambedkar was demanding more participation from the lower classes, while Gandhi was not in favor for that as a separate electorate. Third important limitation was narrow goals. Except few classes of Indian people, there was less demand of national freedom. For example, from South India, if we talk about Justice Party, so they were fighting for regional demands, caste-related demands. Then the last one is non-sustainability. Whatever their demands were, they were not sustainable. People were not eager to fight year-long. They were fighting for their own demands, no doubt. As you must have read, that there were gaps. There were passive and active resistance. There were phases when people were not agitating at all. We know the phase between Swadeshi. We know the phase between Swadeshi to non-cooperation movement, then to CDM, and then to Quit India. So there were gaps. So there is lack of sustainability. Now, apart from these four, there were other issues that we can highlight, as we have discussed in the beginning of the question, that you are not limited to the sample answers. You can come up with your own points if you know the basic difference between various reforms and their limitations. So the next point which I would like to put here is less organized. When we talk about the constitutional demands, be it the Swaraj, be it the Poon Swaraj, be it the fundamental rights, be it the Nehru report, all of them were talking about an organized way of protest. But Gandhian policies, revolutionaries policies, working class, they were less organized in terms of their demand. Even the working class found themselves to be aloof to the entire national movement in the 1940s decade. Then if these demands were limited, why we are saying that constitutional demands were more successful? Because this is how you are going to justify the answer. So constitutional demands were more successful, number one, because they exposed the exploitative nature of the British policies. Be it Dutt, be it Naroji. Because of the drain theory, they told the entire world that India is being looted. India is under poverty because of the British rule. And that's how they were able to capture the viewpoints of the masses. Secondly, the constitutional concessions were demanded. For example, Firoz Shah Mehta advocated for the rights and the representation of the Indians. Thanks to the 1892 Council Act, Indians were granted certain participation, however, still limited. Then came the point that they built the momentum during the passive phase. This is very important. As I was talking about the phase between Swadeshi and non-cooperation, there's a gap of almost 15 years. What happened in that 15 years? There were leaders like Tilak, Annie Besant. They were building up the momentum through, of course, constitutional reforms and constitutional demand. Tilak demanded Swaraj. So they try to build a momentum, because until and unless we have the momentum, people are not going to be ready for the mass movement that happened during the Gandhian phase. So these are the three important points that you can add. Apart from that, there are 2-3 others where you have to justify constitution reforms were good. First is shaped new goals. As we have talked about, from Swaraj, Poon Swaraj, and then ultimately to the independence and the partition, new goals were shaped. Nehru report is the best example. Whenever you're writing questions, when you are writing any answer in history, please try to substantiate your point with good examples. So Nehru report of 1928 demanded for fundamental right, and the same is true with the Karachi, where they demanded for more reforms in terms of economy and society. So new goals came up. Then came the use of state apparatus for further their own ends. Swarajist, 1923, they fought the elections, they came to the power. And the same true with 1937, when they formed the majority government in the provinces. In both the time, they proved themselves. See, if you are saying that revolutionaries or the extremists like Bhagat Singh, they came to the power and they did many violent acts, but ultimately they were not successful to generate mass movement. They were not able to justify their own demands. And through this council entry, Indian National Congress and many of its leaders were able to provide meeting their ends, to provide a platform to meet their ends. Next is successful negotiations. Congress was one of the most successful party in terms of negotiation for freedom, right from its formation till the cabinet mission of 1946. They had their provisions, they had their demands clearly stated through various means. Gandhian policy of mass movement actually helped these policies to come into reality. And the last one is attainment of independence by the constitutional means. Whether we agree or not, it was not the violent means, it was not the hunger strike, it was actually the constitutional provisions, the demand for Indians to be in the power that actually helped the parties, that actually helped all the Indians who were fighting for the freedom to gain independence. So through the entire body, you have to justify with various examples that how constitutional means were more important, were more successful vis-a-vis other policies. But in the conclusion, try to provide that irrespective of their limited success, all these provisions, whether it's constitutional or non-constitutional, help India to build that momentum, help India to gain the participation and fight for its independence. So I will conclude this discussion. In this question, you just have to justify 2 points: why non-constitutional methods were limited and why constitutional methods were more successful to gain India's independence. Now, I will leave the platform and I'll leave it for the essay discussion. So Shashank Shekhar Singh sir is going to take the discussion in the following manner.
Hello, everyone. So in last leg of this discussion, we will be taking up essay topics which were provided in the test. And we deliberately chose one topic from the static portion and another from kind of mix of philosophical plus issues related to current affairs. And in this discussion, we will be looking up at how to relate it to the current scenarios. What is the desired structure? What are the contents and dimension that should have been followed? And while doing this, I'll be telling you how to differentiate between an argument and examples. So the first topic that we had taken is the real problem is not whether machines think, but whether men do. Now, at first go, it is very simple to understand the meaning of this topic. There is no trouble. There is no, not any kind of difficult term that you cannot understand. The simple term that the real problem is not whether machine think, but whether men do. The only problem with this topic is it is kind of static topic with unidimensional character. So those who have interpreted it like technology is a bane or boon is kind of wrong interpretation, because here we are specifically talking about thinking machines. So you cannot interpret it in a manner that nuclear energy or nuclear power or nuclear bomb is a type of machine which can think. So we are here talking about machine learning, and in further simpler terms, you can talk about artificial intelligence. Why we chose this topic? Because due to development and coming up of ChatGPT and other chatbots, along with driverless cars and autonomous ADAS system you have been hearing since very long. So we took up this topic and we deliberately limited it to the AI part. So let's understand this with an example. Now you all know that Tesla Motors came up with a driverless car, or you may say autonomous car. Now, everyone was rejoicing. There was a new technology. Everyone was dreaming about it. There were so many anticipation since very long. So Tesla came up with something which kind of rekindled imagination of mankind. But after some time, a horrific accident happened in USA, which killed 2 people. Now, after forensic analysis, what they found, that driver was sitting behind and driving seat was empty. So problem is who to be held accountable here? The manufacturer or the user? What we can say, who is the problem? Whether a software which is working on AI, that is machine is thinking, that is a problem, or whether a user who is brainlessly just relying too much upon a new technology. So this was the crux of this topic. And if you can relate, if one can argue that aeroplanes have long been using the AI, the autopilot mode, but still there is a mandatory clause that pilots will remain in the cabin throughout the flight. And this has been done to secure the arena. Like if machines does anything wrong, or if any feeler or feedback to the machine is wrong, immediate human intervention can come. And here in this case, the person relied too much upon a newly developed technology. So that is what the topic is all about. That It is not a problem. The real problem is not the development of technology and touching the new horizon through new development. The problem is whether mankind is using its rational or just keeping it aside and relying too much upon the AI. So this was the crux of the topic. You can use many examples to show, to frame your introduction. Now we will try to find the dimension that you can discuss. And by saying dimension, I don't mean just enlisting the example that here we saw this, here we saw that. No, we need arguments. And to substantiate those arguments, we need some examples. So let's take up the discussion for this topic. The first part, as you can easily find out, that this topic is having two parts. So the simplest possible way that you can find dimension is first to break or simplify the keywords. It will help you to find more dimension or more argument for your write-up. So first thing, explain the term what is thinking, because nowhere in the topic you have been provided with the term AI or machine learning. It is all about thinking. So you have to keep your approach step by step, one by one. First explain what do you mean by thinking. In crude terms, we can say that application of your cognitive skills to understand the worldview around you, isn't it? So this would be the simplest possible understanding of thinking. Now, when a machine is designed through a software, through an algorithm, through a sequence to complete or to execute the task which are similar to that of human intellect, is what? Is machine thinking. Now, when you will establish this correlation between thinking and the machine, now you should switch on to the AI or the machine learning, because now you have expressed it to the reader that you are linking the machine thinking with human thinking, and there is one direction or one field of technology which is utilizing it, and that is AI or the machine learning. So after doing this, you can simply talk about why the real problem is not machine thinking. Now, some may start writing significance immediately, that it has this usefulness in this sector or significance in that sector. It sorts things, it make it is. No, first give your argument why machine thinking is not a problem. See, every development in technology has an underlying reason, and that reason comes from society, the needs of society. And that needs of society and aspiration of society make the inquisitive urge in the scientist community or in general masses to find solution for those problems, those questions, those issues. And in order to answer those things, we come up with a new technology. So since our childhood, we have been dreaming, we have been watching movies, having driverless car, robotics, everything. So this is an aspiration of the society. It is nothing new. So technology is going to evolve as per the requirement or the aspiration of the society. So whatever we are developing is not a problem. It is we have demanded this. We are aspiring for this. And that is why we have came up with such solutions. So it is not a problem. Technology is never a problem. And now you might have got an idea that who is at the core of this problem. Now, when you have argued that why the real problem is not machine thinking, now you can go on to enlist the significance of it in various sectors. And you can just like categorize it in various folders, or you can say categories like efficiency, productivity. Then you can talk about accuracy. Okay. Now here in this discussion that it promotes efficiency, it promotes productivity, it promotes accuracy, you can cite a specific example like ADAS system, or you can talk about its application in e-commerce. The big data analytics would help you. It will help you on both the part, both the consumer also and the manufacturer also. Because it will process the data, it will streamline the data, it will tell the consumer what to buy, what would be the perfect choice, as well as it will help the manufacturer to tell that who is your targeted customer. So now you can enlist several examples and you can talk about these important points like efficiency, productivity, accuracy, and you can conclude this part of discussion with saying that AI is here to augment human intelligence. It is not here to replace it. It is kind of assistive thing so that you can realize your dream in a better manner. Now, having discussed the first part, that why machine is not a problem, but whether they are thinking or not. This is the problem. Now, unidimensional topics like this pose a challenge in finding the various arguments. Now, simple technique. Whether men is thinking or not. Now, if you are facing a problem, what you could have done, just 3 levels. At the production level, at the users level, and last but not the least, the over dependence. Now you can give your argument that you can start your argument with saying that problem is whether mankind is putting the moral value at place or not, whether they are using reasoning or not, whether they are using or they are targeting the larger public welfare or not. And then you can shift on to different stages where they are using their rationality during production. What if you are using AI to produce a product which has altogether an ulterior motive, like the deepfake technology you all have heard about, and there is an ongoing debate whether to continue with its uses or not. Leave alone deepfake. Few people came up with deep nude. Now, this development is altogether was for an ulterior motive. Just a cheap publicity stunt it was. Now, you can discuss with example the part of its uses. Now, you are using it for what purpose? Second part of this, first is Your purpose will decide. Secondly, how much you are taking care while putting the inputs, because these machines work on input system, the feedback and input. It is not like you set an algorithm and it will work on it lifelong. It has that capacity that it can learn new things from inputs. So whether you are handling it properly or not. Here also you can give several examples. Like you might have heard about Microsoft chatbot, for which there was a very good comment by a technical executive who said this chatbot transformed itself from a cool person to a complete Nazi person in a 24-hour. It started sexist comment, racist comment. So that is what you can give examples for this purpose and handling. Then you can talk about over dependence. When you will rely too much on it, you are going to lose your own cognitive skill in time. So you can talk about this part also, that this is where the main problem lies. Okay, so then comes the next part. Now you have discussed both the part of the statement. You can talk about what would be the repercussion if this continues to happen. Now, again, you can discuss it at 3 levels: for individuals, for society, and for nation. You can talk about security of individual, peace of society, security of nation, stability of nation. You can talk about privacy. You can talk about ethical concern. You can talk about anything in repercussion. Then what should be the course of action? It's simple. Again, give the course of action, give the what should be done. Provide the solution again at every level, at individual level, at societal level, and at national level. Also, cover the production side, user side, and the dependence side. And your conclusion would cover a basic funda, a basic formula, that after all this discussion, you know that human agency is most important thing in all of your discussion. So neither the technology is going to stall, nor the evolution of mankind. They both are going to grow. They both are going to evolve. Your aspirations are not going to stop. So is your invention. So is the case with your inventions. So important thing is that larger public welfare should be the basic idea. The ethical and moral principle should be the guiding principle while developing a technology. There should be a very fine balance between assistance and overdependence. And there should be a clear cut, you can say at national level, you can talk about, because we cover all these things under IT Act of 2000. We don't have a separate legislation for this. So we need to have a legislation, or kind of say, you may say an umbrella oversight at global level as well as at national level, and that will form your conclusion. So that's bring us to the next topic, which was, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. Now, why we chose this topic? Because UPSC itself has been moving away from the topic which can be written in a temporal or sectoral manner. You need to provide your arguments, you need to provide substantiation, and you should maintain a very fine balance in not just ending up listing the examples. So UPSC is giving you quotes, even longer statements. So we chose this dynamic topic again to replicate the same scenario, because previous one was quite static, but this topic you can relate it to various current issues. In finding solution of present day problem or the problems of 21st century, you can discuss this point with very good substantiation. So that is why we had taken up this topic. Now, first thing, again, topic is simple. Crux of the topic is you have to change your mindset if you want to find a solution for a problem. Even more important thing is when that problem has been created by the same mindset, then it becomes a must to change your mindset first, then only you will be able to find a solution to that problem. Let's understand with a simple example. Year 1945, Korean Peninsula was partitioned on the basis of 38th parallel. Now the northern part was under one family, and to kind of having more grip or strengthening their clutches on their population, what they chose, they just made North Korea a secluded place in this globalized world. No connection from outside, no wind of change from outside, no scope for any exposure to the population. They presented themselves as God, they presented themselves as king, and they were able to maintain their hegemony throughout. Now, after 78 years of their creation, what is the HDI, or you may say, what are the Human Development Index or Economic Index of North Korea? They rank among the lowest. In press freedom index, they are last. In economic freedom index, they are last. They have the highest number of slavery, modern day slavery, they have in North Korea. So the ultimate sufferer is the population. So they created a problem, the ruling class, the one family created the problem for the entire population with a mindset that no one is our friend. If I will let them in, I'll be out. So that mindset, now they are facing all kind of troubles, but they are struggling with it. Now, if in case they want to find a solution, they cannot find it with the same mindset. The same mindset of worldview that everyone is our enemy. They won't be able to find the solution of the ongoing problem. Second example, start with the mankind, history of mankind. For the development of human, for the growth of human, we cleared forests. We encroached upon every natural thing, or you may say arena, which we were supposed not to venture into, but we went everywhere throughout. We had a mindset, we had a thinking that it is human growth which is most vital thing on earth. Now we are facing the problem of environmental issue. Now, if we want to find a solution for this problem, we have to switch to sustainable development. We cannot just talk about growth. Now, if you remain in confusion that whether growth, I should prefer growth or I should go for environment conserve, you won't be able to conserve environment. You need to let it go. You need to switch to sustainable development idea. So that is what the topic was all about. That if a thinking has created a problem, to find a solution, you have to switch your strategy like you do in your examination. If you get stuck at some stage, you need to change the strategy altogether to clear that stage. You cannot find a solution just by claiming that, no, whatever I read, whatever I did was perfect, and one day I'm going to be selected. No, you have to let it go that this strategy is not working for me. Now you can find a solution. So let's find the dimensions. First thing, again, after the introduction, you can discuss why we cannot solve a problem with the same thinking. Because for every new venture, for every new thing, for every new issue, you start with a zeal. It may end up giving you positive results or negative results. Okay. Now, in this topic, we are talking about negative results. What will happen when you will face negative outcome of your efforts? Now, if you will keep on thinking with the same attitude or same mindset, first thing, you will be having that crippling effect on your rationality. You will keep on justifying your previous step. It won't let you find new solution. It won't let you find new ideas. It won't let you think freely. Because you will keep on justifying that, no, I had put it this much effort. I did this, I did this, I did this. Why to change the strategy? It is not about changing your effort. It is just about changing your strategy. So you cannot solve because it will have a crippling effect on your rationality. Now here, after giving this argument that it is a tendency to remain in the same framework, and that tendency will cripple your rationality and objectivity, you can go on to discuss same idea in various themes. Take an example. We talked about North Korea, South Korea. We talked about environment. Let's look at the social issues. Now we have many issues in social arena, like caste prejudice, against females, against physically disabled people, many prejudice. Now, why they are there? Because in some cases, we have a narrow mindset. In some cases, we want to maintain that status quo. In some cases, we want to maintain that hegemony on caste lines or religious divide. Kind of, you may argue the majoritarian thesis or thinking. We have this tendency. And if we will continue with the same thinking, we are never going to find a solution. First, we have to grow up. We have to learn the new realities of 21st century, that these things are irrational without any scientific backup, without any logic, and it is not helping us in any manner. And that is why we cannot solve if we will keep on continuing with same thinking. If, for example, talk about polity, Now in 80s and 90s, criminals entered into the politics. It was the mere aim, the narrow aim was to retain the power, to capture the power. Now it has become kind of a black sheep. Now criminals have become integral part of the political parties. Now, if you want to get rid of them, you need to give away the basic thinking that through criminals, I can retain power. Only then you will find a solution, and then only you can in a objective manner, you can remove people of criminal antecedent. Otherwise, you won't be able to do that. In a similar fashion, you can talk about international relation or international arena, and you can always punch Pakistan for such examples. They created terrorism, they nurtured it just to make India bleed with 1,000 wounds. What is happening to them now? Now, if they want a solution to this problem, first they have to give away this thinking that they can harm India with such methodologies. So you can discuss this part with following examples, with following sectors, with following arguments that you need to give away. It will help you to think rationally. It will help you to get fresh ideas. It will help you to understand the reality and then move on to the other aspects. Like, what if you will continue with this? What if? What if you will continue with this? Answer is very clear. First thing, you can never identify the real issue first. And these are just pointers. You can make sentences, you can give arguments, you can give examples to substantiate this. You can't identify the real problem, then your solution, even if somehow you are half-heartedly, you are able to identify the problem, you won't get solution. The solution would remain elusive for you. And when this will continue for long, name it society, individual, or a country, they are bound to remain in slumber, or they are bound to remain stagnant throughout their journey. They will be the one who will be left behind, because they are not ready to improve upon. They are not ready to accept the reality. So what should be done? Answer is very simple. If there is a problem, or there is a failure, or there is an issue, first thing, accept that yes, this is a problem. Just ignoring it won't help. Second, use your rationality, objectivity, to find a solution. Now you got the solution. What is more important is the third step, the perseverance. Because there is no guarantee that the solution will give you the desired result. So the perseverance part, to fight on, to keep on going, is very important, and that requires a lot of courage. So this would be your way forward, or you can use this part of it as a conclusion also, as problems are going to remain there. Again, nature will change, but everyone will face problem in his or her life. What is more important is to remain, to have the quality of openness to accept your error, then the rationality and objectivity in finding the solution, and then the courage and perseverance to go ahead and just putting your full effort or full energy to find a solution. That is all for the essay discussion, and that concludes the paper discussion for Mains Pariksha 2023. All the best and good evening to you all. Bye-bye.